rolling up Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots and a sexy.
So last week on the show, near the end, I brought up the fact that Facebook got rid of the back button.
Right.
And it's annoying.
I've heard the drama.
Yeah. I don't know if it's for everybody. I don't know if it's an Apple problem or if at the same time, because everybody else I know is Samsung users. So I know it was definitely an issue for us. But the thing that came up this weekend that truly annoys me is that YouTube got rid of the double skip button.
I don't even know what that is.
So for ads, you would hit, because YouTube doubles ads for the most part now.
Right.
If you hit skip on the first video, it automatically skipped the second one. Now you have to manually skip the second one again.
Oh, okay.
So they've decided unilaterally, oh, by the way, we're changing how the ads work. That's annoying. Also, it's weird sitting across from someone.
Hey, man, this is, as you upgrade your podcast.
This is different. Well, if you notice that these mics also have XLR outputs. So they're both USB and XLR.
I saw that.
So when I do eventually get my soundboard, which I do intend to do, then we won't have these problems like we're having today. So
you still have problems. I've got an XLR setup. I've got the Duet, the Apogee Duet.
Sure.
And it's not working right now, and I have no idea why not. Like it was working, and it was working, and it was working, and then we went to go make it work the other day, and it was like, oh no, I'm not working anymore. Like everything's on. You can see that the mic stuff is going through, but the computer's not registering it, and so I'm assuming I'll just go in there and like delete all the software, reboot it, put in all the new plugins, or make sure it's got all the most updated stuff. But I mean, you're still gonna have problems.
So at least the good thing there is you have your board, and then it just plugs into the computer, so you only have one audio input. In this case, we're trying all the audio inputs into the computer, and it causes some issues as it goes.
Yeah.
And even though it has the virtual thing, which is a voice meter potato, which is the actual model of it, it works. I just have to remember how.
Yeah. But
also the computer seems to have to remember that too, because it took 10 minutes for it even to recognize your microphone was there. But it also doesn't. So when we first did this, I had plugged in all the mics, tested it at home, and I got it to work. And then we went to Maryland, plugged it all in, and it redetected all the mics. So now I had 6 mics in there instead of the original 4.
Right.
Or 3, however many I have. Actually, that box sitting right there is the custom transport box I made. It's got all cut foam and everything else in there so that I could haul it all up there, and it didn't look like anything. Because if you have like a nice Pelican case, somebody's probably going to yoink that.
Right.
And because that was the first time we got to record the podcast in person with a good chunk of my cast, because we happened to all meet up there. And then it was terrible by what happened with the recording. Because that's, like I said before, Ricky's mic. So all that static we heard earlier, clearly that's what happened. So it was something was crossing that shouldn't have been, and then so I falsely blamed that on Ricky not plugging something in right. So unfortunately, it is that.
Yep.
So now we know it's actually just a cross signal issue that I'll have to work out. Yep. But the original idea was to eventually have a sit down podcast like this. Because everybody else I know has one. They got like a studio set up, all this kind of junk.
Right.
And it's, I guess because I've been mostly an internet-based show for all of my stuff, that's the way it's worked.
Yep.
As it goes. But back to the YouTube thing. It's like, and the other thing on mobile, and it's a dumb problem to have, they keep changing what the actual skip button looks like. And I don't mean visually. Like, it went from just a little black bar in the corner, now it's a little oval over here, or now it's back to that. And it does the same thing on the TV. The skip button's not the same. I was like, that doesn't make sense. Why is it changing from video to video? And then now we get the vertical ads, which come across totally stupid and different. I'm like, and I'm so tired of Dr. Squash soap ads.
Listen,
my God.
I don't even it's nothing against them, and maybe someday you'll get to the point where they want to be your sponsor, in which case I love that soap.
I don't.
But before that day, I don't love their soap. It doesn't. So I stopped the other day. They had some at our grocery store.
Oh, they did.
And they were all the Star Wars ones, and like one of them smelled okay. And they had like an Obi-Wan. They had a Yoda. They had a Darth Vader.
Yeah.
I want to say they had one more. I can't remember what it was.
I think it's a Chewie,
maybe.
probably.
But whatever it was, like one of them smelled like okay. And
Yeah.
then the other three were like, who wants to walk around smelling like this? It wasn't just me. My wife and my daughter were with me, and both of them were just like, this is awful. And especially like when your wife doesn't like it,
Yeah.
it's a no-go.
Yeah.
Because she's the one that's got to be smelling it up close,
That's
like,
why I
so
use
it's-
the Old Spice body wash, and
Yeah.
then I have the Manscaped cologne.
Yeah, anything that I can find that smells like a Christmas tree is what my wife likes me to smell like. She just likes the scent of Christmas pine. So
Yeah.
as long as I can find something that smells like that, we're good to go.
So you just go get the air freshener, the old school pine thing, and keep it in your inner
yeah,
pocket. and
I
you're
don't
good.
even use deodorant. I just keep those trees braided to my underarm hair, and we're good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the funny thing is, I have a friend who really doesn't have BO, like at all. Like it doesn't matter. I mean, he sweats and everything, but he doesn't have a smell. And I was like, I don't know how you do that, but I'd like it.
Give me those jeans.
Yeah. But yeah. And then the weird thing is, like, and this is a weird personal thing. I don't think people realize that certain dyes actually react differently to you. So, like, if I wear green, I smell worse. It's weird. As like I figured that out, I'm like, I thought it was just what I was eating, and then I realized, no, I smell worse in this shirt.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, so it's just this shirt. So I'll just go buy a different shirt, also green. Nope, still smelled the same. It's like, that is such a weird chemical process you would never consider.
Right.
But there was one time at work, because you know what I do effectively, and I had been drinking heavily the night before and eating pizza with a lot of garlic. The next morning at work was all physical. I was sweating for 2 hours straight. I smelled so bad I couldn't stand myself, and nobody would get near me at work. And I'm like, I don't blame you. I was like, I'm sweating out alcohol and garlic right now. I probably smell horrendous.
Well, as long as you never take a job with like the National Forestry Service, you'll be okay.
I mean, yeah, I guess. Well, I mean, you actually it'd be great for you because you'd always be smelling like pine trees.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, yeah. You just walk around covered in pine sap and leaves. So, I mean, yeah.
Converting the animals, the squirrels and the moose.
Converting them.
Yeah.
I don't know about the moose. I don't. They're probably not going to be good at reading.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, they're kind of mean.
They are mean. You lived in Alaska.
Yeah, you lived in
know.
Alaska,
Yeah.
so you know. I saw them in Colorado, and that was from a distance. Like, I mean, we pulled over on the side of the road and we saw them, and then we went on a trek to go see them and get as close of pictures. And it was a what's the word I'm looking for? A mother and a calf. I forgot what the female name would be. Not a cow. That wouldn't sound right.
Yeah, it's a cow.
Is it a cow,
Yep.
technically? Okay. I was going to say that, but it didn't sound right. So, yeah, I saw the cow with the calf, and we got a picture from, like, still, like, 100 yards away.
Right.
So I'm like, I'm not getting closer to this thing. It's enormous.
Yeah, well, that's smart of you.
Yeah.
When we lived there, we would go and visit, national parks or whatever, where tourists congregate, and people would see a moose and like run towards it, and it would be like a mother moose with her calf.
No.
And you'd be like, I'm hollering, I'm like, stay away, and I've got like a Benelli rifle on my back that I'm like locked, cocked, and ready to rock if we need to.
Yeah.
And they're just running towards it, and there were times where I had to like get between people who don't speak English and the moose, and I'm like waving them off, like saying,
So
"Don't,
yell
like,
at
they
the
will
moose.
kill you."
Yell at the moose. It'll probably understand
Yeah, well,
you.
you probably would have understood better. So, and then they were mad. They were mad at me. Man, there's so many stories
we
like
just
from
wanted to
Alaska,
see the
like
moose.
people, crazy people doing crazy things with wild animals. I don't know.
Yeah. And by the way, one thing I did want to say is, well, now you have listened to some of the show. You can use humor irresponsibly here.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I
so
plan on
feel
it.
free.
I plan on it.
Feel free to be as irresponsible with your humor as possible, because nobody's going to get offended here. Well, I mean, on the other end, they might. So,
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, guys, welcome back to the Now You Made It Awkward podcast. I am Shoky, and with me today, I have a special guest,
Hey,
James,
that's me.
who actually is a former YouTuber.
True.
Yes, and your channel was.
James at War.
Yes, and you were active well over like 12 years ago, right?
Yeah, I
Way
was
back.
really back. I think not when YouTube was like starting, but when it started getting really popular.
Like 08, 07.
Yeah, back in the days where in order to make money with YouTube, they had to contact you. It wasn't like now. I assume it's still this way now, where anybody can go apply to be a partner and roll ads on their videos and make money that way. But back then, they had to contact you, and so they did contact me. And for a while, I was a top 100 YouTuber, which today, by today's standards, would be like an absolute nobody. So, well, my subscriber count would be very, very low compared to anybody of note now. But yeah, it was kind of a thing at the time. It was fun to just make videos and have people watch them, and several of them went viral, and that was just kind of cool to watch that happen and just learn, I don't know, what makes people laugh and what people enjoy. So, but yeah, and then it was like I got to a point where I can either try and go make a living at this, or I'm out. And as it turns out, I was out. I didn't really enjoy the fame that much, and I started to get recognized when I would go places, and that was weird. And I went to a convention for YouTubers and had people run up and like jump up and down and
like early VidCon.
Yeah, early VidCon.
Okay.
I was at the first few VidCons.
Nice.
Hank Green, who puts that on, is a friend of mine. I know him and his brother John. And so I helped them with that. Well, the first one. I helped them with the first one. I just attended the second one.
Yeah.
And when I say I helped, I mean in the minimalist way possible. I had nothing to do with like its success or anything like that.
You were there. You moved.
I was there, and they were like, "Can you help us do these things?" And I was like, "Yes, I can." And who was I a handler for? Because there were people that were definitely more popular than me. I want to say Dave Days. There was a guy named Dave Days who was really popular back then.
Sounds familiar.
Rhett and Link,
of course,
who are still popular.
Still. Have you heard Rhett's music?
I've heard it, but I haven't like gotten into it.
James and the Shame.
Yeah,
we listened to it and it's pretty good.
Okay,
He's got a good country vibe going on.
Yeah, he's a talented artist and musician,
And comedian.
Yeah, they're very funny guys.
Yep.
But anyway, so it was fun. Yeah, I had a lot of fun. But it was weird to have people like run up to me and be like, "Are you James at War?" And I'm like, "Yes, I am." And they'd like start screaming and then ask for my autograph and stuff. And that was, I don't know. I'm not going to say like I loathed it. I didn't loathe it, but neither did I particularly enjoy it. And so I don't know. Eventually, I kind of lost my passion for it, and I was like, if I'm not passionate about it, I'm not going to do it. So just stop.
Well, in a previous get together, you have talked about how like you're not really a people person.
I'm not.
In a people, you're more of a person.
Yeah.
Even though you say you're not good at that, but you kind of are. At least in my experience.
Well, practice.
Yeah, practice does that. I mean, I was a shy guy who couldn't get along with anybody. Now I'm an outgoing guy who can't get along with anybody.
No, nice.
So it is what it is. Some people say off-putting. I don't know why.
Off-putting.
Yes.
Well, only when you wear green.
Fair point. That's why I only have one green shirt now, and I don't fit in it anymore because,
well, then not a problem.
Yeah.
Problem solved.
Yeah, well, I'll have to get rid of all this so I can fit back into
so you can fit back into it and put people
fit back
off.
into my stinky green shirt.
Stinky Green Shirt.
That might be the name of the episode. So
I used to play bass for Stinky Green Shirt. They were a great band.
Well, I mean, they needed one, so you were there. So either way, guys, if you've heard me in recent weeks talking about going to men's group, this is, in fact, the leader of said men's group.
Ooh, leader.
Yeah, well, you are. I mean, that's the thing. Co-leader? You want to give Andre?
I don't know.
You want to split up so it sounds less
I'm there.
important?
I show up to the group.
Well, you make us look at you and you talk. So, I mean, there's that. You're like, look at me.
Look at me.
Look at me. I am the pastor now. That is a great meme. That meme will never die.
Yes.
And I hope it never does. I mean, if a Grumpy Cat can stay relevant, even 10 years after her death, I believe that the Somali pirates will always be.
There you go.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Grumpy Cat.
Rest in peace. Yep. What was her name? It was. I always forget it because Grumpy Cat was obviously the internet name, her YouTube name, as it were. It was something totally weird. I'll remember it one day. Or I could Google it if my internet was working. For some reason, my internet's not working despite the Wi-Fi actually being on. It's like, no, you're too far. Except the PlayStation works perfectly fine there.
Well, you're 2 feet too far.
2 feet too far.
It's a very strict
if
limit with your
if I get
router.
Wi-Fi in the bedroom through all these walls, it should be working. I think the computer's just like, I want to be plugged in. So being a grumpy kid is what it's doing. I gotta be careful where I kick because all the power cords are at my feet. So,
well, if we just go dark for about an hour,
that's
everyone
what
will know
happened.
why.
Yeah. And guys, this is technically episode 75, and I did want to do more of one of the anniversary episodes where we get everybody together, but this is one of those times where nobody's available.
You have to settle for me.
Well, that's okay. That's not settling.
I'm glad to be here on the 75th show.
Yes.
Celebrate with a guy who's never podcasted before or been on a show before.
It's okay.
You're welcome.
Well, this isn't celebratory, really. I mean, we'll do something bigger.
Not for you. I'm celebrating.
Oh, yeah, for you.
I've listened to 6 of the shows, so I feel like that gives me the right to celebrate. And
hey, I appreciate it because a lot of people don't listen, and it's fine. So you gave us at least 6 listens.
Well, I had to go back.
It was only 10 minutes, but
you asked me to come be on it, and I was like,
research.
I should probably research it and know what kind of a show I'm
Exactly.
going on.
An awkward one.
So
it's where we talk about stuff and things. And,
and make it awkward.
There's dick jokes, and Jeremy can fuck off. But that's
I remember that episode.
Yeah. We're still dealing with Jeremy's problems, but there's been no fallout from it yet. So
about 3 months back, I started texting my wife all these pictures of Burt Ward dressed in costume. just a bunch of pictures randomly with absolutely no context of the original TV show Batman's Robin, Burt Ward. And after I said about the 6th pic, she's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, I'm sending you dick pics. Because, yeah. And that's how, you love it.
You should have mixed it with different Robins from different things, so it'd be even more confusing.
No,
like anime.
No, strictly Burt Ward, man.
just
Burt Ward only.
Burt Ward only.
Burt Ward only.
Good Lord. Okay. Now I know what I'm dealing with. Okay.
Hey, to be fair, in the 6th episode, or maybe it was, I don't know which episode, one of the ones that I was listening to, and you made a reference, which I got immediately, but nobody in your comments got it, which was an Ace Ventura reference.
Thank you.
To Laces Out. I don't remember what the exact thing that you said was, but you're like, oh, nobody will get that, and I was like, that's Ace Ventura.
Yeah, we were talking about Ray Finkel.
Yeah, Ray
and
Finkel.
Talking about as long as you put the football out, because we were talking about the kicker, the female kicker that came in on the college team, and then she did a terrible kick.
Yeah, which I almost wanted to go look that video up, but I was right in the middle of fixing my garage. And
I think it went 20 yards or something. It was kind of sad for him. I mean, she was apparently the best kicker on the other team, but they celebrated this whole thing, big drum roll, all this stuff, and then
well,
they're really like a fart in the wind.
Bless her heart.
Yeah, bless her heart.
Because we're in Texas, you can say that.
But no, definitely. I like throwing out references that people may or may not get, because it's always fun. Because we also throw out Letterkenny references fairly often here, but we don't really.
Yeah,
have that many
I probably won't get those because I've only seen the internet clips.
Probably the intros from.
I've never actually sat down and watched the show.
It's fun. The humor's super dry most of the time, but the characters are super well fleshed out. And season 12, which is going to drop fairly certain, is the final season.
Oh, really?
So I'm kind of sad. But as long as Shorzy continues, which I forgot to mention it, I have watched all of Shorzy season 2. Mm-hmm. It's fantastic.
So how are you finding it?
Mm-hmm.
You streaming it illegally?
No, it's on Hulu.
Oh, it's on Hulu.
Yeah. So Crave.
You just can't get the more recent stuff.
We can't get it fresh. We have to wait till it's over and then it goes out. So because it's only 6 episodes for Shorzy, anyways, it's over 6 weeks.
Remember Fresh TV?
Barely.
Yeah. I was going to say, I don't even know if you're old enough for that.
I think you're only slightly older than me.
Back in the day where you had to wait for the episodes to come out and you had to clear out your Wednesday night at 7 or whatever, whenever your favorite show came on.
Yeah.
And what was it? And now they're starting to do that with some of the stuff that they stream. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it was kind of nice. It was I was definitely reminiscing about the days where, hey, at this time, I'm going to sit down and watch this show. And of course, it's a little different now because you can go watch it whenever you want. But I really have kind of enjoyed like some shows. There aren't a lot of shows that like I would be so excited as to be like, man, as soon as it's streaming, we're going to sit down and watch it. But some of them are, and that's been kind of a cool thing. I like that they're starting to release them episodically instead of just all at once. So you just sit down and absolutely binge it.
Yeah, that's what I said last week with Dante. I said, like, I'm back to the point where I want things episodically. I think we had the binge area of time, and I think it's dead. And I think it should be, because it's so much nicer, because, like, okay, the only reason why I keep up with things on time at this point is so that I'm not spoiled by it. Because, you know, you got all these YouTube channels doing reactions, breakdowns, and all this stuff, and they post things in the thumbnail, and they don't care if it's a spoiler or not. Like, I haven't got to see the Marvels yet, but every channel I'm watching is doing Marvels videos all weekend long. And I'm like, and then even one of my own co-hosts decided to post the end credits spoiler in our chat. I'm like, dude, some of us actually want to see the movie. I understand you hate it. But I actually wanted to go see the movie.
I actually might go see that later tonight.
Yeah, so I thought we didn't have time, and so
I was supposed to go see it on Saturday with my daughter, and I didn't. I don't remember why. I don't even. Weekends are always a blur for me. Like, don't ask me what I did this weekend because I don't remember. I know I worked on my garage a lot. Mm-hmm. It took me a year. I finished my garage. Well, finished. It's functional. Yeah. Which is to say, it hasn't been functional for like a year, and now it's finished. So I noticed you always talk about like what's been going on in your life. My garage has been going on, which I know is not a terribly interesting topic, but no, that's been, and so that's why I got to listen to six episodes
while you're working on the garage.
While I'm working on the garage, I'm like, dang man, these episodes are like 2.5 hours long, but
these are the short ones.
Yeah.
Well, it used to be that the episodes, if you go back, I used to have to split the episodes up because I didn't think anybody would be listening for 3.5 hours. So I would take like a 45-minute chunk out and make it an extra or bonus. So sometimes episodes will get recorded and there's 3 episodes per episode. Yeah. So it's when you listen online or on a streaming service, there's way more episodes because the numbers, there's like episode 68 bonus, that kind of stuff. So there's like 100 and what did I see it last time? I think it was like 115 episodes on Spotify, but there's only 75 episodes.
Oh, okay.
So, and actually there's two bonuses that were never aired because nobody could agree to release the one because it's a touchy subject. I thought it was a perfectly good conversation. Right. But, if everybody doesn't agree, then it is what it is. We do a little democracy around here. Not much, but a little. Sense. It's still majority.
Cancel culture is unfortunately a thing.
Yeah. And I mean, we were just talking about racism when we were growing up versus racism now.
Oh, yeah.
That's what we were talking about. And then the thing is, that conversation, I got to, like, the main reason we didn't release it was because it was 3 white dudes sitting around talking about racism.
Oh, well.
So, I mean, but it was how we experienced
it. Yeah, it was your lived experience.
It was our lived experience. But then somebody brought up, I believe it was Ricky correctly brought up, it's like, we're having this conversation. We have no black guys or anybody here to voice what they went through. And I'm like, that's a fair point. Yeah. So when we went up to Maryland, I did that. And that's why Dante and I are friends now. Yeah. That conversation is like what got me and Dante talking. It offended other people. Right. I'm not going to pretend it didn't. And I probably shouldn't have brought it up when we'd all been drinking at a big old party with everything else. Yes. So,
hey, we've all been drinking. I have an idea. Let's talk about racism, guys.
Well, I said, it's like, look, and it's like, and I trusted the guys in the room. I'm like, look, I know you guys are going to be honest. No matter what it is, you guys are all honest, and you'll be cool. Yeah. So I said, do this. Turns out I should have just done it with only Dante. So if that episode ever airs, that wasn't on my
then it
podcast.
Wasn't you.
Huh? Yeah,
the leaked episode.
Yeah, the leaked episode. The other one, it's still there. I just haven't dropped it. I might get bored one day when we have no episode for a week, and I'll just be like, here's this. What do y'all think? Okay, so how long have you guys been in that house?
Just over a year.
Okay, so y'all only been here just over a year.
Yeah. So when we moved into this house, right? And speaking of racism, we move into this house, right? And there's the guy that lives there is a Palestinian, and just culturally very, very different, the way that he views the world, the way that he does things. the way that he decorates the house, and apparently the way that he DIYs the house, because let's just say not quite up to the standards that I wish that they were. And so, anyways, long story short, when we bought the house, he was trying to get everything out, and he basically shoved everything into the garage. And we bought the
Like you
house
do.
that way with the understanding that he was going to come get it out like a day or two after we purchased. And I'm like, that's fine because I don't need the garage yet. Well, a month later of me never having access to the garage because there's so much stuff in it, him and his son come and start pulling stuff out. And then it's all in my driveway. He leaves it there for a few days. Everything gets rained on. I'm like, what's going on with this guy? And then so finally he gets everything out of the garage, and then it's clear that at some point he had locked a very large dog in that garage that apparently that was just where that dog lived, because the drywall is just shredded with claw marks, and at the doors, like in any of the entrance or exit doors, the dog's trying to get out, scratching. I mean, like everything's just trashed.
Yeah.
At some point, he did like a DIY addition above the garage, so all the ceiling is jacked up. They never fixed the ceiling. I mean, the whole thing just is garbage, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, we're gonna have to redo this entire thing, and it has been like a year-long process for me that I just finally
because it's got the little bridgeway over to above the garage, right?
So that's
from inside.
That's another garage.
Oh, the other garage.
That's
the one
the
behind.
other garage. Yeah.
Yeah, because I noticed it. I just didn't.
That one's going to be a
man
man cave, and that's probably going to be like one of my final projects.
So wait, which garage were you working on? The garage.
The big one.
Okay, so that
Yeah,
one.
there's a double. Well, it's a 2.5 car garage where you would actually park cars
So you mean 2 cars and a motorcycle?
and a motorcycle.
It's not a.
Yeah.
Two, it's like 2.5 cars. I was like,
Yeah, or perhaps 2 cars and like a smart car.
squeeze
You
it
could
in
do
the middle.
that. You could squeeze that in there. But anyways, so yeah, I had so many problems with this guy, and the cultural barrier like just didn't help because I don't know, he had expectations that I'm like, man, I don't know how to meet those expectations because I'm just an American white dude trying to buy a house, and you are a Pakistani guy that's trying to make everything into like this bargain thing, and I'm like, that's what a realtor's for. I'm just like, talk to the realtor.
He's like bartering with you. It's like,
Yeah.
but if we do this, you can do
Right, and
we'll talk about this. Is what this? And
Yeah,
I don't know what that
it was.
accent is.
It was a nightmare, not because he was Pakistani, but just because like the expectations were just
Random rubber band.
Yeah, and he didn't care about like American laws. Like we signed contracts, and then he reneged on them, and I'm like, you can't do that. I could literally take you to court and sue you.
That's not a good
And
thing.
he was like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Just go ahead. And I'm like,
we went to the house for a group the other weekend, and because I'd wondered, because obviously you guys have been redoing all of it.
yeah, I mean, we had to renovate the entire
Yeah,
house.
you've been renovating all of it, but my initial thought was that it was a Hurricane Harvey
No
reconstruction.
No,
That's because
it did really well.
Surprisingly,
it
okay.
did. Yeah, surprisingly well.
Yeah, you're far enough from
survived
some of
that
the creeks and stuff.
Yeah, it's not in a flood zone, and
Yeah.
he said nobody in that neighborhood flooded.
Yeah, because that's what I was wondering when I saw that. I'm like, it was like, are they just redoing it just because, or was it damaged? Because so many of those houses, as you probably know, is that they were basically wrecked and never fixed.
Oh,
because
yeah.
the money from the insurance companies never made it to people.
Right.
And all the giant funds that were raised never made it to people.
Yeah.
There are people who literally just lost their home and waited for 2.5 years to get nothing.
To get right.
And then 4.5 years later, they just bought another house somewhere else because they couldn't do anything. Or they just bulldozed it eventually.
No.
Never even getting a payout, never getting anything.
No, we had to renovate because everything that he did to the house, he hired the cheapest labor possible, and
What? No.
yeah, and then so we had to replace water heaters and air conditioning systems, and
Is that why the AC only works in the one room?
Well, actually, so until recently, the house had three AC units.
Yeah.
2 of
it's
them
a
were
big house.
down.
Yeah.
That happened since we purchased the house. 2 of them were down, and then about 2 weeks ago, the final one went out.
Oh.
And which was we only had to live with the hot house for about 1 week, but you'll be glad to know that there are now 2 brand new air conditioning systems
Just in time for winter.
in the house, just in time for me to not need them.
Yeah.
And but yeah, they're so actually there's guys at my house right now that I am entrusting not to steal everything because there's no adults in the house. But he's a good
Yeah,
guy.
no,
The contractor is a guy that I know. So
so that is kind of the hard part, especially with that. And we're very familiar with the lowest bidder being brought in to do things because we lived in apartments for all this time, and all the work we needed done on our past 2 apartments before this one. Like, this was a significant upgrade. Like, I would never have brought you to the old one at the condition it was in.
Just uninvited.
It was like, I mean, of course, it was all the same stuff, but the apartment was horrible.
Right.
Water leaks, everything else like that. Whenever the AC unit flooded the apartment, they thought they didn't do anything for a solid week. Actually, water was coming out of the walls for a week. And the people behind us, water was coming out of their walls for 11 days before they opened up the walls.
Wow.
So, and then I forced them to come in and rip it all out and do what they had to do. Turned out it was just a clogged AC drain.
Yeah.
So it was just overflowing every time the AC came on, and it was the middle of summer, and we were on vacation whenever it started getting worse.
Fun.
We had to drive back from Dallas in a hurry.
Right.
We just extended our vacation by a day. My cousin was watching our place because we knew it was happening, but it was controllable.
Right.
And they said, well, we'll get to it soon. I'm like, thanks. So he was watching it for us, and then he calls. He's like, hey, man, it's really bad. The water's almost to your room and almost into the bedroom. He's like, I've got all the towels out here. They're all soaked. They're doing whatever we can. I was like, all the bad words. We're screaming. Our office manager was at a base or softball game for her daughter, and we're like, I don't care. You get her on the phone, and you get someone to our apartment right now to deal with this. And, of course, they had the worst. At that point, they still had the good maintenance guy.
Yeah.
But they had the bad guy, too, who was the first one on scene. Completely useless. But then the people they hired were so shoddy. Like, they did an okay job on the drywall on some spots, but other places was absolutely horrible. But, like, the tub kept leaking from above. And then it turns out, like, once they fixed the tub, then we still kept leaking. We're like, what is going on? And it turned out it was the seal around the bottom of the toilet. And every time the kids would splash water or the toilet overflowed, that water was just coming into our ceiling.
Yeah.
And then now, like, I Facebook reminded me the other day that it was the last time it had done it, and the water's coming through the patch from the previous repair. And I'm just like, I'm done.
Don't you love it when Facebook's like, hey, remember this horrible thing that happened?
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Exactly.
Thanks for bringing up my mother-in-law's funeral. That's the reminder I needed to start my day with.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Thanks, Facebook.
But, I mean, like, that's how we remember now, because our brains are so overloaded with...
If I didn't have it, I'd be like, oh, yeah, Mom's dead.
Yeah, we're overloaded with all the new Marvel shows that we forget what actually happened in our real lives. So Facebook has to remember for us. Which, given like going back 10 years or something like that, I'm like, oh, I actually completely forgot that ever happened. So yay! And then the rest of it is all vague booking about the horrible things that you were going through, and then not wanting to talk about. So they're like, and you got all the comments, hey man, I hope everything's okay, praying for you, all this other stuff. Meanwhile, you're like sitting there crying in the corner because some horrible thing happened, but you can't talk about it online because somebody said, no, you can't do that. So, yeah, that's where I was at right now. What was I just thinking of? I had a brain fart. So I was going to ask, are you guys remotely up to date on all the Marvel shows or no?
The shows.
Because I talked to...
I haven't watched whichever one is the one that Sam Jackson's in.
Secret Wars. Or
yeah,
Secret
I haven't watched
Invasion.
Secret War. I haven't watched that at all.
Don't.
You're
okay.
Basically because, everybody that I had talked to about it was like, you don't have to be in a rush to go watch that one.
No, it's bad.
I have not watched Loki season 2 yet.
Okay, so I won't spoil.
I want to watch it.
It's so good.
But it's just been,
It's so good.
I've been spending all of my time, as I said, in my garage. So, but yeah, now hopefully I'll have some space open up to.
So last season, I said that Loki is the best season of Doctor Who we've gotten in a long time. So I will say that Loki season 2 is definitely an even better season of Doctor Who than we've gotten in a long time. And I do know the 60th anniversary is coming with David Tennant, yada, yada, yada. Don't care anymore. I hate that I don't care anymore. It's just so bad. I won't. It's like we watched the first season of Jodie Whittaker and we were done.
Yeah.
And that's horrible. Like, I love Doctor Who.
I was just talking about that literally yesterday with my wife and daughter, Jodie Whittaker. And I said, it's not that I hated her. I love her as an actress.
Yes.
I've seen her in other stuff. So when I heard she was going to be the first female doctor, I'm like, okay, yeah, I think that's a good choice. Like, let's see what happens with it. And then, it's my opinion, but I feel like what they did was they didn't know what they wanted to do with her because they wanted to celebrate that she was the first female doctor. This is how I feel. That they wanted to celebrate she was the first female doctor, but then they, at the same time, they wanted to say, but we're not going to go overboard with the she's a girl power, equality. They didn't want to like go overboard into all that stuff. And then they sat down to start writing it, and they just like they could not help themselves with the creep. They just couldn't help themselves, and then it washed out the character. It just washed her out. It was like she was not distinctive enough to just be the doctor. She had to be the female doctor, and I don't know. And I'm like, either go in that direction. I mean, if they wanted to do that, they totally could have done it in a funny and entertaining way, where it's almost like a joke, or like it's so much a part of like, oh, I'm a girl this time, and just like play off of it and make it fun. But they didn't do that. I guess maybe, I don't know if that was because they thought that would be disrespectful or what. I don't know. Whatever it was, it didn't work.
They leaned so hard into, and actually it wasn't even necessarily the female doctor aspect that bothered me. It was the idea of the fam.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, the Doctor's had a lot of companions on board before, and it always works out badly. You always get one or two that dominate, and the other ones just get relegated to sidekick work.
Yeah.
We got rid of Mickey really fast back in the day because it's just like, nope, can't have this many people. But if we have Rose and Jack, we're kind of on board because they work together as a great team, and Jack is independent enough. And you get the Pawns. That was good enough.
Right.
But then we immediately went straight back to just Clara. It's like
which was my least favorite companion, by the way.
Shelley said the same thing, and I'm like,
I just don't like her.
I loved Clara personally,
I don't like her.
But we're not here.
She's cute.
Yeah, we're not here.
That's
I mean,
about it.
I think that they tried to make her, and this was a thing I saw about it was a rating of different companions, and she was rated under Donna because they tried to make her the most important woman in existence when Donna had already done that.
Right.
It's like Donna literally saved all of reality.
Yeah, but you're talking about storyline stuff. Like, okay, any writer can sit around and say, okay, we're going to make this companion the most important person. That doesn't mean that their character is good. Like, you could make a terrible character the most important person.
Yeah, I agree.
And they still might be a bad character. Like
100%.
I just didn't.
That happened. That happened back in the day.
Yeah.
There was a really crappy character, but he was given the saving role.
Right.
Like in the story. No, I agree with that. But when it comes to what happened, like you were saying with the Jodie Whittaker thing, and it's not her. It was not her failure. It was it was Chibnall's failure.
She did all right.
Yeah. It was Chibnall's failure to understand what the Doctor does. So there's always, and Star Trek does it too, and now it's a similar creep when it comes to Star Trek, is and I don't want to just specifically say feminism or anything, it's just one aspect of all the stuff that they're cramming into all TV, but it's just like...
I don't feel like Star Trek, it was really a creep. It was more of like a tidal wave.
Well, it depends, because it used to be...
Discovery is practically unwatchable in my
I haven't seen past season 3, so I can't rate into that, but I liked season 1 and 2.
I liked the story they were trying to tell. Just all the unnecessary
But
fluff.
when it came 100% about Burnham,
yeah,
then it was like, now Burnham's the most important person in the universe, but why? And then blah blah blah. But it was the same thing, is that like they had the message of the week, and they could put it in the context of the episode, and there was a lot of subtext and not a lot of hammering over the head.
Right.
And then they just said, oh well, here's a hammer nobody's using.
Right.
And so they just said, here's the frickin' thing. So when they did the Rosa Parks episode, it was just like, oh my God. It was like, okay. So not only do we have the female aspect, we also have the black aspect, and we have like super or anti-feminist racist guy from the future coming back to make sure Rosa Parks doesn't do the thing so black people don't become important enough. I was
But,
like,
if they could have taken a page out of their own book, I'm all about getting that message across. They already did that well in Deep Space Nine.
yeah,
They already
that's why it's
had
the best Star Trek.
They already did it well there. Like, go back and look and watch those episodes where like he goes back in time and all that, and like that's doing it right.
Yeah.
And then fast forward to Discovery of like you said, like we're just gonna take a sledgehammer to this and whack you over the head with it, and then it's just like, it's not good storytelling. And isn't the purpose of all of this entertainment, Marvel, Star Trek, Star Wars, it's all supposed to be stories, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the most important thing. And when the stories are being sacrificed at the altar of here's what we want you to learn, here's and I don't like to use message is a better word, but when you use a sledgehammer, then it feels more like an agenda than a message. I would say what happened in Deep Space Nine, that's a message. What happens in Discovery is an agenda.
Yeah, 100%.
In my opinion.
No, you're 100% correct. And with at least with Deep Space Nine, their message they were going for was, because that was in the middle of the Iraq War.
Yeah.
That was in the middle of all the stuff going down over there. And it's like, it made sense that they had all of this sort of, here's the horrors of war.
Right.
Cisco was a war criminal.
Right.
I mean, he did a genocide, or at least tried to. He saved as many people as possible, but he definitely threatened genocide to get his point across to catch the number one bad guy. And then, of course, everything Ducat did, that wasn't great either.
Yeah.
The founders, you had a whole lot of interpretations of our own history being played through there, and then they even talked about that several times in like the time travel episodes. But then you get into, say, Enterprise, and Archer literally have to go to an alternate future where we have Nazi alien vampire looking dudes influencing 1942, something like that. So they that was the funny thing. It's like they just come in and they just become the Nazis because it was easier. It was just like, okay, like, cool. It's almost like when they did it again in Voyager with the Hirogen, doing that whole thing where they turned the entire ship into a holodeck so they could hunt as the Nazis.
Yeah.
And it's like everybody else gets to be, whoever's hiding in the floorboards. As oh my god! So I was on an episode of Titillating Tuesdays over on Mike's channel last week, and biggest faux pas that I think I've ever heard in a live show I was a part of. Mike confused Anne Frank with Mary Shelley.
As in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Mary Shelley?
He literally was thinking, it's like, yeah, the Nazis got in the way of her writing
the Nazis. Darn you.
I was like, Mike, who are you talking about?
Nazis
oh my God.
bad.
It became the joke of the whole show after that point. And then one of the other guys on the show confused Mary Shelley with Bram Stoker.
Okay.
Because just
why
crossing things over. And so now we're talking about how Dracula was on the Western Front. And all this, you have to go listen to it. It was ridiculous. It kept going further and further, and we kept it going throughout the show. That was a great show. So a little plug for Mike, because Mike's not here today.
Yeah.
So Comic Relief Crusader channel.
God bless you,
over
Mike.
there. And oh my God, that was just because I was going to let him keep rolling because he was all talking about how she almost didn't get to write her book.
Yeah.
And then he thought that she wrote a book about her time in the walls and in the ceilings. Like, no, she wrote a diary. Someone else turned that into a book, Mike. I was like, Mike, what is your heritage again? And he's like, Russian if you go back far enough. And I'm like, yeah. And then if you don't go that far back, he's like, shut up. Because he's German / Jewish. So it's like, your family did do this. I was like, it's like, dude, go back a notch. Go back a notch in your own family history, my friend. But that was hilarious that happened. But it's just like, and of course we call it woke nonsense, as we say. But I
feel like people are waking up to it though. Like, I feel like
the irony.
more and more people are just done with it, and because it wasn't doing anybody any good.
No.
It's not like, again, when you have a message that you're presenting in a reasonable fashion, especially if you're doing it by telling a good story. I mean, that's so much more of a way to get people to be like, I hadn't thought of it that way before. rather than the sledgehammer approach.
Yeah, reframe, add subtext, and allow people to discover the message.
Right.
Instead of just big neon sign dropped in their lap.
But I just couldn't with the Discovery, at the point where we're getting non-binary ghost aliens, and I'm just like,
No. Okay. Oh, okay. Now it caught up. I figured I remembered who you're talking about.
Yeah. So
the trill.
and then that person. Well, I don't want to. You haven't seen everything yet, but I don't know.
Well,
it's
I've
not
seen
too much
through-
of a spoiler.
I've
Like
seen
that person
through
is just
3.
gone all of a sudden, which
Really?
I feel like
Indira?
was the right move.
Was it Indira or whatever her name was?
Yeah, I don't remember
or
the name.
Their name, to be polite.
Their name. I don't know what. I can't remember the name.
I think it was
But
something
you know
like
who I'm
Indira,
talking about though.
Indira.
Like at some point,
And they had the
and it was.
ghost-
I went and I read articles about it, and they
Yeah.
were like, everybody hates this character.
Yeah.
And so they're planning on writing them out of the show, and then they did, and it wasn't even like it was just kind of like
It wasn't like a nice send off. It's just
okay, bye,
So
and then they're gone.
They
so.
Rollaren'd her is what happened. It's like, and the thing is, it wasn't a bad character because I remember when they were introduced and the idea that they had to accidentally get this Trill installed in as a human who had to have a Trill symbiote installed, and then because it was her boyfriend for being as simple as possible with the description.
Yeah, I don't know who knows.
And so the
I'm
idea of
confused by it still.
Yeah, the hard part was it was just the storyline of having a human Trill hybrid was already difficult,
Right.
Which was great, but then they had to throw in the trans identity stuff in there, like with a hammer. It was like, oh,
Right.
it's they,
Right.
Like, it's like, okay. Now the thing is like, and I talked about this before. Other series, even Star Trek, has done literal non-binary species.
Yeah, Riker.
Before. Yeah, Riker. Yeah, Riker and his whole thing. And I think Paris also did something there too.
No, that one I
I
don't
think he did
remember.
in Voyager. I think there was some other weird thing in there before he and B'Elanna got together. He was almost like the Riker of that
Okay.
story in a way. But yeah, no, Riker definitely got way too involved with that. But
Well, and sort of there too. Again with the Trill, to where like, okay, the Trill is male, but the host is female, but they had
because
you know what
the
like, there was
symbiote
that whole
itself has
thing.
no gender.
Yeah.
It's just the personality.
But the personality that it was before.
Yeah. So it in itself, like Dax, for instance, like so Dax is a symbiote, and it carries its own thing, sort of, but it doesn't have a gender because it's just a slug,
Right.
for lack of a better term, and it just gets installed in whoever's there. I mean, you go with like Stargate, the same thing as wow, my brain said Jim Hadar, and I know that's not correct.
I can't help you because I only ever watched the movie. I didn't watch the
You're
series.
missing out.
I want to watch the series though.
It
I
takes a
started
minute.
getting okay. Well,
Yeah, it takes a minute. It's only,
I was
it's
about
it's
to open
only
a
like
whole other can of worms.
It's only
about
like
all
10,
that, but
10 seasons.
yeah,
Of just the
Only-
one show.
only 10
and then you
seasons.
have 6 or
yeah, you have
6,
SG-1, you have Atlantis,
and then Universe, and then
Universe.
whatever they sort of did after the fact. There's the other series that are spin-offs of the past and stuff like that, but it's going to come to me here in a second as to what they actually are. Funny thing is, I remember their spin-off culture, which is the Tok'ra. Those are the good symbiotes. Why can't I think of the other ones? And I know the Jaffa served them. That's what Teal'c was. I cannot believe I can't remember this.
No.
All the Stargate fans are screaming. All 2 of them. But either way, the idea that you could have a non-binary entity that's living in a gendered species.
right?
But then, like, with a human, they can't separate the personality.
Right.
So all personalities flooded that character all at once.
Right.
And then they were already ambiguous, to say the least. And they said, like, well, in the future, gender doesn't matter. I was like, well, go talk to Captain Jack about that. Because he will screw
Which
any-
Captain Jack just now I have to because you brought Captain Jack up.
Sure.
I've been hit on by Captain Jack
and
IRL.
Excellent.
Yeah,
I have not got to
and Gwen
experience such.
at the same time. Yeah, they
bastard.
both told me to call them, but then
So-
failed to give me their phone numbers.
Okay, so since we're on that particular, because you and I haven't got to have this conversation, I had this conversation with Shelley. Children of the Earth, best Torchwood season.
Gosh, man, it's been so long since I've watched Torchwood that it all kind of bleeds together. That
was, of course, the third big series.
Yeah,
Where everything went wrong.
I don't know. I want to revisit Torchwood because
Yeah.
we're actually going back through the Ninth Doctor right now.
Okay. It's a short walk.
Yep, it's a short walk.
Which
and
Ninth Doctor?
Don't get me started. We're going back through all of Eccleston's stuff,
Yeah.
and because my daughters haven't seen everything, so
Neither has Jessica.
they've seen some of it, so
Yeah.
they're like familiar with some of it, but not all of it. And I was saying because back when we were watching Torchwood, so I have 6 kids, 5 by blood and 1 by adoption, and back when we were watching Torchwood, like that would have been inappropriate for their age.
I mean, a little bit.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, like, yeah, it would have been.
super
It would have been.
super sexy Doctor Who. Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been. But they're old enough now, and I was obviously like, they're well past old enough now. So I said, "Oh, you guys would actually probably really enjoy Torchwood." So we will get around to that.
I mean, there was the like sexy Stardust ghost alien that was inhabiting that virgin girl. So there's that whole episode of Torchwood. See, I watched it enough that I remember a good chunk of it. But like the Torchwood touches on the whole idea of is there an afterlife and all this other stuff, because I think that was either season 1 or season 2 where people were dying and they would use the resurrection glove. I think it was season 1. And because that was like the big thing, is that because of course by the end I can't remember his name. Owen dies, and Jack uses the other glove on him,
Right.
that they knew existed, and they didn't know if it would work the same. And they resurrect him with the glove, and then he doesn't come back right.
Right.
And like Doctor Who is a torturous enough show as it goes.
Yeah.
By the way, that's the norm around here. The noise. But like Torchwood ratchets that up.
Yeah.
Oh, that was the thing. That's what Shelley said to me. Something about Yanto. I think you visited Yanto's grave or something. I forgot what she said. Something about Yanto, and I'm like,
Yeah, we did. We
too
went
soon.
over. We were in Cardiff,
yeah.
and we went over to Yanta's grave, and then we also
I just
went
can't.
to the diner.
Yes.
That is all Americanized.
That's right.
That one's in Doctor Who. I know Matt Smith's in there. I want to say Capaldi does one in there, maybe.
Yeah, he goes
Tennant,
back
I
to
think
that
does
diner.
one in there.
Yeah.
But anyways, if you go, if you ever have the opportunity to go, pop your head in and go, oh, hey, this is the diner, and then go sit in the booth. They'll tell you which booth it is that they always sit at. Go sit in the booth. Do not order the food.
Is
The
that bad?
food was probably the most disgusting burger I've ever had in my life.
was an
They only serve
attempt.
American food.
Yeah.
So it's burgers and hot dogs. How you screw up burgers and hot dogs, I don't know.
I mean, they're British.
I mean, Sonic does it every day,
Welsh,
but
technically.
Welsh.
Hey, now hold
but
on. I just
it's-
caught that Sonic. Dude, the Sonic around your house must suck.
The Sonic.
They're better
So
up here.
my son works at Sonic.
Okay.
And the other day, I'd been, again, working all day in the garage. And so I'm like, I don't want to make myself anything. He's coming home from work. I'm like, hey, get me that employee discount. Bring me home a value meal, right? So he brings me home a double Sonic cheeseburger, some chili cheese tater tots. I didn't even finish it. I was like, what is this garbage? Like, and it cost me $6.50 with a 50% discount.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I would never pay $13 for this horrible, horrible meal. I don't know. Like Sonic used to be good, man. It used to be good.
It comes and goes. I'll be honest, because we have 3 within really close driving distance right here,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you, I only go to the one, like because the other one is sketchy. Like sometimes it's like perfect,
Right.
And then the drinks could be horrible, or the tots have a really weird flavor. I don't know what they did.
Yeah.
Just something tastes wrong. And then the other one we only do when we're headed out to the wifey's mother-in-law or whatever, or well, my mother-in-law, her parents, and just because it's on the way.
Right.
And it's a good, not quite midway, but quarter way stop to get something to eat. But I don't disagree that certain places their Sonic is horrible.
Yeah.
But Whataburger's the same.
Whataburger is starting to go downhill. The one by our house is
Maybe
not too bad.
starting. Yeah, see, that's the thing. Is like it comes down to the individual one. So there's a brand new one that's down here, and then there's the old one that is up here because we're in a loop situation, and then there's one in the middle. And like so, I'll only go to the one.
Yeah.
Because I just realized, there is one in all with the forks around. There's a Whataburger in all 3 sections, main highways.
Well, it's Texas. You're listening to the podcast and you don't know what Whataburger is. Like it's in the South, primarily in Texas.
Mostly in Texas because it started here.
It started spreading though, but anyways, they do have, like, for a fast food joint, they're pretty good if they're not being lazy about it.
So always order a burger that is something changed.
Oh yeah,
because
so they'll
the only
make
way
it
it's
any
fresh.
kind of way that you want. They say there's literally over 1 billion ways.
Yeah. But
yeah, you always have to order it something to where they have to make it.
Yeah,
fresh.
because if you order a standard burger with nothing
don't do that.
changed, you're going to get one that's been sitting there, especially at rush hour.
Yeah.
Because I've gotten one that was ice cold when it was handed to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, the cheese wasn't even melted.
Right.
I'm like, wow, impressive Whataburger. And that was on my way home. I was starving, and I was just like, I need something. And I'm like, this is terrible.
Yeah, and to be fair, like the the only time that I'm usually eating Whataburger is like close to midnight, so it's usually not quite as busy then, and so you're usually getting
You're
fresh.
more likely to not have food sitting around.
Exactly.
I do prefer their onion rings.
Their onion rings are really good,
but
with the spicy ketchup.
Spicy ketchup. Dude, did you ever get the second spicy ketchup?
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, it's okay.
It was chipotle peppers instead of jalapenos.
Yeah, it was okay. Like I
liked it better.
I didn't think it was like that much better.
I liked it better. I just like the flavor, not the spice. I mean, we like spicy stuff around here. But,
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah, so I got a bunch of crazy hot sauces in the fridge. So you've got a whole cabinet full of whiskey and stuff at the house. I've got a whole bunch of hot sauces in the fridge.
Yeah.
Also, you didn't get to see my little bar card over
I
there.
did see it.
Did
I
you go-
didn't.
you
I
need to
didn't
go
take
pick through it
I
and
didn't
see.
take a close look.
You need to go pick at it, see if
I
there's
almost
anything in there.
recommended like we take a shot before we do this, and then
I mean, we can take a shot in the middle of it for all I care.
Bit of a looser tongue, but anyways, I just got a text that apparently I'm going to be doing men's group tonight, so
Oh, fun.
I probably will not take a shot right
No.
now.
Well, I mean, you've got.
I mean, that's-
you have 6 hours.
I told you I'm a lightweight though.
I mean, at this point, you might as well stay up here.
Yeah.
I won't be going to men's group tonight because I got to go pick Jessica up from work.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, that does suck. So
I mean, it does. It's not too bad that you're picking your wife up. That's very manly of you. But
yeah. Well, no, the hard part is like having to go get her. And by the way, I didn't get around to talking about this because we're just been.
Well, we were talking
We're-
about
we're just
terrible
free-
burgers in
we're-
Cardiff.
we're
and then we got
free-flowing.
off on a
Yeah.
fast food tangent.
Yeah, we're more free flowing than structured today, and that's fine. But yeah,
Welcome to our train of thought.
yeah, this is just how
Enjoy.
it goes. Well, normally I'm like keeping things within some form of reins, but it's okay. I'm not worried about it today.
Yeah, 75th episode. Who cares?
Yeah, you're new. You're new here. It's fine. If we had like a whole bunch of people going on like normal, like 2 or 3 people, then we'd have to keep some reins. But it's just we're just free flowing back and forth. So new developments. So Jessica's in a cast.
Yeah.
And all that. She's got to roll around, right?
Right.
We got crutches for her, so to try to help her get up and down the stairs.
Yeah.
She has abandoned using the crutches to come up the stairs.
Okay.
She is now crawling on her hands and knees.
Oh.
So we bought industrial knee pads.
Nice.
Yeah. They're really nice.
And
not gonna lie.
gloves, I hope.
Yeah, I already had gloves for her,
That's
honestly. Like, because I bought gloves for her so she could help me work on the car one day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just had them in the car. I mean, they
Wait,
need to
if
be
you buy
washed.
your wife gloves, they help you fix your cars? I didn't know this.
No, I bought gloves
gonna
for
have
her
to
so
go.
she would have to help me fix the car.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if you buy, so if
Oh,
I buy
you're
my
right.
wife
There's no-
gloves, she has to help me fix the car.
There's no
This
guarantee.
is a rule.
Well, you can't fix your car.
No,
No,
that's
her
true.
car you could.
That's true. I can't.
Yeah,
fix
she's
my
got
car.
the much cooler car. You just had the faster car.
Elon has to fix my car.
Yeah, Elon literally comes to your house with some duct tape or whatever. It
Hey,
takes to
Elon
fix it.
did me a solid the other day.
Oh, yeah?
I took my car to Tesla to get a tow hitch installed.
Okay.
Because I have a trailer and I need to be able to pull it. I have a van that I used to pull it with. I want to sell the van because I don't really need it anymore. So I was like, well, I have to have something that can pull my trailer. So, anyways, I had several things that I need to get done to the Tesla and some warranty work that needed to be done. And total was going to be like $1,700 to me. You had to enter in your information. Like, you do it all on the app because it's Tesla. So you do everything on the app first. You prepay for it, and then you just take it there, and they do the work, and you're done, and you're gone, right? So I get there, and I notice, like, as soon as the car arrives and they check it in, like, it pings my card for $1. And I'm like, well, that's fairly normal. Like, they're, like a kind of a place marker almost.
Yeah.
I go, I pick up the car, and he's like, well, everything was prepaid, so, you're good to go, which all made sense to me, except for, like, I went and I noticed, like, they never charged me anything. They took the $1 off, and everything was at zero, and then he gave me the invoice, and everything had been zeroed out. Well, I looked at the invoice prior to, and, like, there was all these... all these charges totaled $1,700. $1,700.
Like you do.
Plus. And when he gave me the invoice, everything was zeroed out, and it said total zero. So I asked him about it. I'm like, I thought it was going to be $1,700, and he was just like, he grabbed the invoice, he looked at it, and he was like, no, looks like everything's taken care of, like it's all free. And I was just like, okay, but some of that wasn't warranty work. And he's like, I mean, you want to argue about it? I was like, no, I don't. He's like, have a nice day.
I mean, yeah.
$1,700 worth of stuff they did to my Tesla, and I did not pay a penny for it. So thanks, Elon.
Whoever did that, nice.
Yeah.
It's that Twitter money.
That Twitter money, that X money.
Said he
That
supposedly
big X
has
money.
lost enormous amount of money.
What is a tweet called now?
Just a post.
Are they X's?
No, it's just a post.
He X'd it.
Just called posting. I call it twixing.
Twixting?
Yeah, it's Twix.
Yeah.
Yeah. Twitter, Twix, X, whatever.
Anyways, my point is, don't eat at the diner in Cardiff.
And watch out for your Sonics, realistically.
Yeah.
Pick a good Sonic. Isn't that funny that we have that? That is a thing. Like, no, you want to go to the good Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, the good one.
The good one. It's like you always describe it that. And the funny thing is, like, because of location. And by the way, we have. Okay, so I think we still only have 2 Chick-fil-A's in town. They might be working on another one, but we're finally getting a Dairy Queen because the Dairy Queen, the original Dairy Queen here, shut down many years ago, and it needed to.
I heard about that.
It was bad.
Yeah.
It was horrible.
I mean, it's Dairy Queen. They only make good blizzards, and everything else, in my opinion, is garbage. And I would know because my wife worked at a Dairy Queen for years when we were dating and first married, and we were broke as all get out, and we lived on Dairy Queen. We lived on Dairy Queen, and yeah, it just, even with my wife making it and doing her very best, it was still pretty bad.
Yeah, blizzards are definitely the best part, but I'm not unopposed to the. I'm not opposed to the burgers, but I'm not going to go there for a burger.
No.
But if I go there for a blizzard and a burger happens,
Like if I were driving by a Dairy Queen and like someone chucked one in my window, like Patrick Mahomes or something, and
like
it landed
specifically
next to me, I
so
would
Patrick
consider
Mahomes-
eating it.
Patrick Mahomes just
If it was
throws the
Patrick
burger.
Mahomes, I would eat it, and that way I could just say I ate a burger. that
Can you
was
sign
served
the
to me
wrapper,
there.
please?
Could you please sign my burger? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a weird situation that he's just chucking burgers into traffic.
Yes.
Patrick Mahomes chucking burgers.
I mean, it's happening in some universe.
I mean, somewhere in the multiverse.
Somewhere in the multiverse.
Yeah. Speaking of
That's
which,
what
Loki-
Patrick Mahomes does.
Speaking of which,
he
Loki
just
season
chucks
2.
burgers into people's windows as they drive by.
Like he's just standing outside of Dairy Queen, hucking burgers at people.
Yep.
There you go. I didn't want this. Some people don't have their windows down,
Yeah.
and it's just splatting.
Mm-hmm.
And we're assuming there's a wrapper, and it's
Yeah.
just holding together well. That's just dumb. That's all I could think of.
And we'd like to welcome James back to the podcast.
Oh my god. What was the other thing? Oh yeah, so my car is currently dead.
Ew.
Yeah, tried to go to work on Saturday, and I'm like, oh great, it just got cold enough for the battery to go.
No.
You know why that's a
So
big
it's just
slap
the battery,
in the
though?
face? Yeah, it's just the
Okay,
battery.
well, that's good.
But that's a slap in the face because guess which car we put a brand new battery in?
The one that got wrecked?
Yes, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally a month
And
before.
suspension.
Huh? Well, that
And
was
suspension.
at least the suspension was a year before. The battery was a month before. So part of me wanted to be like, I should have snagged that battery and just taken it back.
There's so many things that like happen when you sell a car or a car gets trashed or something, and then like 2 weeks after the fact, you're like, why did I not grab that from that car? Like I had a car. I traded in a car one time that I had bought WeatherTech mats for.
Oh,
you know,
no.
and they're like $200,
Yeah.
$250, and the dealer doesn't care. They're probably going to take them out anyway. But I didn't think about it until 2 weeks later, and I'm like, oh dang it, I could have like sold those on eBay or something.
Exactly. And like usually, like if it's like equipment and stuff like that, I'll remove certain things, but I
Yeah.
rarely sell a car. They usually just disappear somehow. But like the last few cars I've had, I didn't really modify, so I
No.
didn't have to worry about anything. I just did upgrades. Like I mean, when we got rid of the PT Cruiser, I lowered it. Whoop-de-doo.
Mm-hmm.
You know, nothing crazy. Put a cold air intake on it. Nothing crazy. But interior-wise, nothing. It was just the transmission was shot.
Right.
But with the Civic, yeah, man, I just put new. I just put all the new suspension on there, new brakes. Irony, the brakes were, I mean, the brakes didn't fail by any means, but you know, just irony. They just couldn't stop fast enough. But we're just planning on doing so much more. I put a new sun visor in that thing because the one before had been installed so poorly. Like, there's already screw holes, right? And like, so I guess they were having an issue with it like flipping down when they didn't want it to. So they put 2 other screws in it to tighten it up, and it was ruined and it wouldn't function properly. So I just hopped on eBay, found one that was the exact model, exact color and everything, slapped it in there in like 10 minutes. I was like, seriously, why does nobody just do the easy thing?
Right.
And like that thing, there was one problem. Like somebody had messed up. I guess they were trying to do something with the transmission, and they had broken the little sleeve that goes up to the shift knob.
Right.
There's just a little plastic dealie. It's supposed to lock in place and then do it. It never would lock in place. They'd clearly broken a chunk of it. So that was like the fidget spinner while driving. Just like, play with that. I had no idea how to fix that. That was the thing. So I couldn't do anything about that. But having just put a freaking battery in that thing, that was so bad. And now I need a battery. That's why it's a slap in the face. It's like, I couldn't use that battery, but I could have taken that battery back.
True.
It was like, it's only a month old to be like, hey, I don't need this anymore. Now, actually, I put a radiator in it. Was it a radiator or a radiator fan? Put one of those items in there a couple of years ago. Well, it was when we lived here. So, yeah, it was at least a little after we moved in here. Because I couldn't figure out how to get it out. And I had to destroy a chunk of something to get it out initially. And then realize, oh, this whole thing just unbolts. And I'm like, well, it was broken anyway. So who cares that I destroyed it? So, was it the or was it the AC? Either way, it doesn't matter. Something along the AC or the radiator, some BS like that. But I will say the one thing I don't regret putting in there, well, correction, I regret having to put it in there. I'm just, it was the starter.
So those are always fun.
Yeah, and where this one was, it was the most literally the most inconvenient spot on the entire car. So most of them, and I had a friend who used to work on Hondas, so he told me, it's like, yeah, it's not easy. It's easy. It's right here. Like, just pull the battery out. It's right there on top of the transmission. I'm like, no, it's not. And he's like, what? What do you mean? He's like, no, it's on the back side of the motor, above the transmission, and under the exhaust.
I'm familiar.
Yeah.
Not with that particular model, but yeah, I've seen starters in stupid places like that.
Yeah, that was so dumb.
Like everything's made to where you're not like it's
not supposed
designed so that you don't work on it because they want to make all their money on the
100%.
Because I had old cars when I started driving, like everything from the 80s, and it was easy to work on. Like everything, it was like bolt on, bolt off.
Yeah, and there was room.
And there was room to
Lots
do it.
of room.
And now it's like, I don't mess with it anymore. And that's actually one of the reasons I got a Tesla was just tired of trying to work on cars.
Yeah.
Which is not to say like the Teslas don't break down. They do, and I'm not going to be able to fix that either.
No.
But I don't have to worry about oil changes or starters or alternators or all that other kind of stuff. And that was an appeal for me. So.
No, you just got electric motors that may or may not catch fire one day.
Yeah, true.
It's a gamble.
Yeah,
it's fun. But like this one, I actually had to drop the lower exhaust, and I had to move a couple other things, and then I had to work with every extension I had from the wheel well across and over to stab a bolt to remove it. Mm-hmm. It was horrible. It took me 7 hours on my back in the parking lot.
I'm sorry you had to go through that, Shoki.
Thank you. Okay, back it up already, bud.
Yeah, back it up already.
So
you won't go by your given name on the internet, but you use your wife's name.
Yeah, we did for a while, but then she came in and said her own name, so it was just easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't say last names.
I don't have a cool name. I don't have a cool...
You're James. It's easy enough.
Good marker.
I mean, you
such
had
a boring name. I have the most boring name on the planet, but
I don't know if that.
Sometimes I just want to go down to the courthouse and just change it to something really cool. But I only want to do it like if all my kids are on board too, and we just like start a new family name that's never been done before. I don't know what.
So you want to change your last name?
Yeah.
I mean, your last name's fine.
But
boring. I would argue John is more boring than James.
And I think they're about the same.
A is a brighter sound.
Yeah.
So you got the A sound.
Yeah, but then
John
people call
just
me
sounds
Jim.
like.
I really hate that because they just assume that it's okay. Like I'm like,
Yeah.
first of all, it's never anybody under the age of 60.
Yeah.
But if they're over 60, it's a 50-50 shot. I'm going to get called Jim.
They're probably going to call you Jim.
I'm not Jim. That's not my name.
Yeah. Well, it's like my buddy Bobby. Don't call him Bob.
Yeah.
Only his dad calls him Bob, and he doesn't like that because his dad was Bob, so he's a second or junior, whatever.
Well, what if it's Wolverine and he calls him Bub?
Bub is probably okay because he likes Wolverine,
as long as he doesn't misunderstand it.
Yeah, yeah,
like
but no,
apparently Blob did. I watched that scene in the other day where they're in the boxing ring.
Yes,
and he's like, "Hey, Bub," and he's like, "What did you call me?" And I'm like, "I don't. How do you? He didn't stutter. He said bub. He didn't say blob.
Too much fat in his
That's
ears.
Yeah. Fun times.
Oh man, I forgot about that. I
Yeah.
haven't watched those movies in
I
forever.
don't blame you.
But now we have to with Deadpool 3 coming.
Somewhat forgettable.
Deadpool 3's coming. It's going to have all the references.
Yep, that's true.
Yep. And apparently, from what I saw, Hugh Jackman is actually going to take part in the Secret Wars movie.
Oh yeah.
Supposedly, as at least that chunk.
I heard they were
Wolverine.
trying to figure out a way to like get Fox X-Men into it and then like shift it over to a different kind of.
Well, we'll have a new universe
Right.
regardless, but we'll have some of them. And apparently, that's where some of the spoilers from the Marvels has come in.
Oh, okay.
It's X-Men related.
Yeah, I had heard that.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
but,
then
that's
again-
all I heard. I'm
Yeah.
like, well, yeah, no, that's not to me. That's not like a spoiler.
That's not a
Like,
huge
duh, they're gonna
thing,
do
but
that.
that's what they're trying to do because they have to bring in the multiverse somehow.
Yeah.
And we know Deadpool is going to do a whole lot of Fox multiverse
Right.
stuff. But and once again, I don't know if this is a rumor or real that Daniel Radcliffe is supposed to be like the Marvel, the MCU equivalent to Wolverine
You're right.
because he's the right size.
Yeah.
But that might have been an AI image because it showed him basically with the hair,
Right.
and he got jacked.
No, yeah, it was definitely an AI image. I mean, that's
I don't
not.
know.
that's
It
not
looked
him.
really good.
I don't think that's
Because that was a rumor for a long time. Because people
you but he's not that great of an actor. I gotta say, like, I don't get me wrong. I love Daniel Radcliffe.
Yeah.
I loved Harry Potter. I loved him in the Weird Al movie. Thought he did an
Oh, yeah.
amazing job at that. But I've seen him in other stuff that I'm just like, he's very wooden. I just can't see him playing.
do you think that's a him or a director problem?
I think it's
Because-
a him thing because he's wooden in Harry Potter, but as the character, Harry is a little bit wooden, like,
Yeah.
and so that's okay because it fits the character. But then he's carried that over. I've watched him in other stuff, and he like carries that persona over. I
Which
just
is
think
weird.
he as an actor, he's just a little stiff, and that's not really Wolverine. So I don't know. I don't. My
then-
call is that's not going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen.
Maybe. I mean, I don't disagree. I just don't know because like I haven't seen him in enough things,
Yeah.
but it seems like in other, maybe it's a genre situation too. I don't know because like he plays basically like the son of the devil or whatever in
Yeah.
Horns. That's a different situation.
Right.
And then wasn't it Swiss Army Man where he was like the weird
That one, I don't think I caught that one.
half.
I saw Woman in Black.
Oh yeah. Because he's done a lot of things nobody knows.
Yeah, I mean, he does a lot of smaller stuff.
And I
too.
think he's even done some TV that nobody knows, like,
Yeah.
or like British shows or something, or maybe buried in Netflix's universes somewhere. Because I know he crops up sometimes. And go, was that Daniel Radcliffe?
I just feel like it for most of the Harry Potter kids, it was somewhat of a mistake to try and capitalize on their fame by putting them into other stuff because
Yeah. Well, Emma
like they
Watson
were
is-
great as those characters,
Yeah.
but that doesn't necessarily make them phenomenal actors. Like you were great at doing this thing. That doesn't
did
mean you
good
have
here.
range.
Yeah.
And if you don't have range, then like let's not stick them in a bunch of other things where they really kind of need to have range.
Especially if they grew up in a situation like that. So they grew up on the set of Harry Potter, not knowing any other form
Right.
of acting.
Right.
So they just, and with all kinds of different directors, Chris Columbus and all the other guys. But of course, who was it that did Prisoner of Azkaban and Half-Blood Prince was the same director, and he was like usually does like the really dark. And
Was that Del
gritty-
Toro?
Not Del Toro, because he never did Harry Potter.
He didn't?
No,
I could have sworn he did.
don't think so.
Oh, well.
Because I would love to see a Guillermo del Toro led thing. Once again, my internet. Oh, hey, look, I have a phone that works
Nah. Yeah, I don't.
that I didn't put on mute. Good job, me.
Yeah.
I'm amazed we haven't been getting notifications. Okay, let me look here. Harry Potter directors. Because I'm pretty sure. Oh, Alfonso Cuarón. He was the one who
Oh,
did.
okay.
So he's fantastic in that. So I think like those were the better movies. Chris Columbus did most of the early ones, which is far more kiddie. That makes sense for Chris Columbus. Mike Newell, I think, only did
Oh,
one.
he was supposed to do Azkaban.
Okay.
Del Toro was supposed to do Azkaban.
Well, that makes sense how
he
Cuarón
turned it
got in
down
there.
because he had his own vision for it, and it wasn't. It's going to be super contiguous with what Columbus had done to that point.
Yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, that's also how you get all the visual differences and like how the acting, and people don't give directors enough credit for bad movies
Yeah,
because a lot of times it's just poor directing.
true.
not just a bad script, because you can make a bad script okay with good actors who have been directed well, and it just sounds terrible, but it can still work around it. I mean, I don't know, the original Suicide Squad movie.
Yeah.
Good director, good actors, bad script.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay,
that was
let's go to that movie. I think that whole thing could have been salvaged.
yeah.
I mean, the movie, everything about it could have been salvaged to where, like, right now, you ask me right now, was it a good movie? No.
No.
Change one little thing about the lore, and I'd say, okay, yes, it's a good movie.
Such as?
If it would have been revealed that Joker was Jason Todd.
Oh, like they were leaning into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then everything makes sense.
Yeah.
Everything makes sense if that Joker is Jason Todd. And that's all they had to do to make everything that everybody hated about the movie, because it didn't make sense and the Joker was this and the blah, 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 and all that. Like, yeah, but if that Joker was Jason Todd, then all of the stuff that happens in that movie makes total sense. But and then they had the opportunity to do it because they made a sequel.
Yeah.
But they didn't.
Well, not a sequel.
Well, whatever.
A requel.
Requel.
Yeah.
But
Well, the idea that they redid that movie almost entirely, or at least half of the movie, they redid it, and it was the guys who cut the trailer that did the redo of that movie.
Yeah.
That made it into, now it's not about the Joker and Harley Quinn. It's about, I almost said sorceress. What was she called? You know what I'm talking about, though.
Yeah.
Either way, the wiggly dancy girl.
Yeah.
Poor Cara Delevingne. I think that was her. Yeah. Which basically had to stand there and wiggle with lights around her until a big guy with flaming head came into. Either way, yeah, it was supposed to not be that. I mean,
Right.
I think the Joker. I think Jared Leto said they cut out like a full 11 minutes of extra footage of just the stuff he's supposed to do in the
Which
movie.
was fine because he was awful as the Joker.
I don't think it was awful. I think it was just
Unless it's Jason Todd.
Unless it's Jason Todd. But also, had they given that Joker room to actually do anything,
Right.
and he didn't. We get a lot of story about the Joker, and we get flashback to a couple things.
Plus, how do you follow up Heath Ledger? And that was just,
Well,
I didn't pity anybody who had to follow up Heath
pick
Ledger.
up the green hair, yeah.
Yeah.
But of course, now with the 3 Joker story, it's possible we have
Right.
all these Jokers.
Right.
So, I mean, it is what it is. It's difficult. I wish they had not abandoned that storyline that was established in what was that, Batman v Superman, where they established that it probably was Jason Todd, and then even some of the things he said alluded that he was probably Jason Todd. But that would preclude that there was another Joker before him,
Right.
that is no longer around,
Right.
which would have started an interesting new trend, and also give it credence to why Batman gave up.
Right.
So yeah, just change that one tiny bit of lore, or actually don't change it, bring it out.
implement it.
It was there. It's like, just bring it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is the hard part with that, is that they took something great and then turned it into crap.
I don't know that any of it is salvageable at this point. And reboots are so common that even rebooting it, I almost feel like the DC universe needs a years-long break.
They need a full hiatus.
Just absolutely don't do anything unless you want to, if you want to do like some one-offs that don't matter to anything at all. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Like, focus on that maybe find some
Peacemaker.
success there. But yeah, they just need to absolutely step away, come back at it with all new. I mean, which is a shame because I absolutely love Gal Gadot at as Wonder Woman. Although the second one sucked, but the first one was so good.
And in the other roles, she, in the other movies, Justice League, Batman v Superman, she's great.
Yeah, she did great.
It was just
so it's a
84.
shame to lose her,
Yeah.
but I don't feel like it's a shame to lose anybody else. I'm just like everybody. I mean, Henry Cavill did okay. Like, I don't think he was phenomenal or anything, but he
was good.
He did well. Certainly better than what's his face.
Brandon.
Yeah, Brandon Routh.
I think he did okay for the Superman he was playing.
That was writing too.
But he was playing the Christopher Reeve Superman. He had to embody that.
Yeah.
It's the hard part. Is like, at least Cavill didn't have to stand on someone else's shoulders.
Right. Well, that was casting too. I feel like too. It's not that Brandon Routh did a bad job, but the girl who played Lois Lane did. There was no chemistry there.
Rachel McAdams? Question mark.
Maybe that sounds right.
Yeah, because I always want
no
to say
chemistry
Amy
there,
Adams.
like whatsoever. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, you have to have. I mean, that was what was great about the original Superman movie was like
Yeah.
the chemistry between Clark and Lois was phenomenal.
I like that
And
you said
then-
it that way.
And then in the Superman Returns movie, which is like, it looked like two doorknobs kissing each other. I was just like, there was nothing there. And
Well, he also
it was just-
disappeared for like 5 years,
yeah,
to go find not Krypton,
right.
and then came back to Kevin Spacey. So I mean that's a little shocking.
Yeah,
I will say Kevin Spacey.
Kevin Spacey did a good
He
job.
did a great job as Lex.
Kevin Spacey did a
Like,
good
I mean,
job.
everything else he
And-
may or may not have done.
And I wasn't a fan of the Lex Luthor in the newer
Oh, you mean
Facebook guy.
You mean Zuckerberg?
Yeah, Zuckerberg guy.
That guy has a real name, but I only know him as Mark
Jesse-
Zuckerberg. Jesse Eisenberg. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
Wasn't a fan
but he
of
was playing
that
Lex
character.
Jr. To be fair,
yeah.
we never got to see real Lex on screen. We only got Lex Jr., which makes no sense because Lex Jr. was a clone of Lex with his brain put in him from the
Right.
comics. So it makes no sense.
It doesn't.
And then he had daddy issues. It's be like, well, where's your dad? He's the one we really want to deal with. That's kind of the problem with that old DCEU is that it didn't set up enough.
Yeah.
And it would have been, I thought that it would have been interesting to get a not Snyderverse, God, that was Snyderverse. In the Batman Begins and all that universe. Nolan. So the Nolan verse would have been interesting to branch out from, not build something new.
Right.
Because like a gritty, realistic Batman dealing with gritty, realistic stuff, and then all of a sudden, now we got this dude who can fly.
Right.
And that reminds me a lot of.
It would have been fun to watch, though. I would enjoy watching Bale's Batman like try to figure out this flying dude.
Yeah.
Especially if there wasn't really anything up to that point.
Yeah. And that's the thing
And
with
then-
the Batman White Knight comics.
Yeah.
Because it's an alternate universe where all of Batman's history has happened, kind of like the Lego Batman movie did, where it's like, yeah, literally we did all of this. So in that universe, all of that has happened, but it's only Batman centric. There's no other superheroes at all. It's just Gotham, just Batman. And then when it gets to the Batman Beyond area, and it's all completely alternate, like Bruce went to jail, all this other stuff. That's why he stopped being Batman. And he comes back, and then you find out at the end of that story, Diana Prince comes up to him as an FBI agent with Jon Stewart as her partner and says, hey, you're the only person we think who's equipped to handle this. And he's like, okay. He's like, well, you're used to dealing with superpowered freaks, right? And they're like, uh-huh. And they hand him a picture as like, well, there's this boy in Kansas who can do these things. And you see a young Superman.
Right.
So now we got an old Bruce Wayne dealing with a young Superman. So they're going to reboot it into a New World's Finest comic, branching out from there. So it would have been interesting to see that in the Nolan verse. Like, so even if we'd gotten Cavill, like, because I think a lot of people were putting those together because they were nearly the same time. Because Man of Steel came out, I think, after Dark Knight, I believe.
Yeah.
But before Returns. Or Rises, sorry, getting all my Batmans confused.
Right.
It's like Batman Returned and Superman Returned, but only one of them rose. And actually Batman didn't rise, Robin rose, which is also weird.
Yeah.
Which still, Joseph Gordon-Levitt Batman, maybe.
thanks.
Maybe someday.
I don't think so. He did a good job in that role.
Yeah, he was great
But
as
I
a
don't-
not
I don't
Robin.
know. Yeah.
As a not Robin, he was great. Why don't you go by your first name? It's so much better. It's like so dumb. I'm happy with the ending of that movie, though, as it goes. But yeah, no, in the DCEU situation, I think that you're right. They should have just, if they're going to reboot it, take a big break.
Take a break.
Don't just go year to year.
Go find like some obscure, doesn't matter,
Yeah.
and make a couple of movies of that for fun. And who knows, maybe that grows into something you can boot off of that or something. I feel like that's what happened with Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, who the heck knew who Guardians of the Galaxy was?
Nobody.
For the most part, nobody knew. And then all of a sudden, like, boom, everybody's wearing Groot on their T-shirts and everything else. Well, why? Because it was awesome. Like, the movie
Because
was
James
awesome.
Gunn.
Yeah, because James Gunn is James Gunn and did a great job. And even and I mean, really, that's how the Marvel. I mean, Iron Man was not a big deal.
Not that-
people
not when they started
who
it, no.
a lot younger people. I mean, I'm 43, so people who are a lot younger than me just assumed that Iron Man is the face of Marvel Comics. Like, Iron Man was not the face of Marvel. Like,
He
that
was.
he's
He wasn't
not
even the
who
face of the
people
Avengers.
thought of when they thought of Marvel. And
Yeah. Captain America was basically the head of the Avengers, not Iron Man.
right,
Like
and,
forever.
but they made this BA movie, and and then all of a sudden, like, that's started off the whole thing. I feel like they could maybe take that approach with DC if they wanted to, but they got to have the right people to head it up.
So, I mean,
With who?
exactly. No, the problem is that they tried to jump in at the Avengers and then make individual movies,
right. Like,
and now they're trying to write it by doing new Batman, new Superman, new all these other things.
Yeah, I think they just need to give all that a pass and go to some obscure character and do that. And
I agree. Go out. Well, I think that's one reason why at least Peacemaker worked as a series outside of all the rest of it, because it could give.
Peacemaker. My daughters are so mad at me because I haven't watched it yet.
I mean, it's a horrible show in the aspect of the show.
Yeah,
Good show, horrible show.
right.
Great act. John Cena as an actual actor, when he really gets to play, is great. But then also getting, what's his name? Robert Patrick as his dad and being like a tertiary bad guy to this situation, also fantastic. But then because it's so tied to the DCEU that existed then, because Peacemaker's coming back for a second season, but it's going to be in the new universe.
Oh, okay.
So only keeping a handful of characters and actors and then starting over. So it's like, but that's the other thing is that WB not only is canceling DC stuff, they canceled other movies now because it turned out there was this other John Cena led movie. I already forgot what it was called. They're canning it.
Right.
It was already done, and they're
Right.
canning it.
Like
so
the
WB
Batgirl-
is just trying to save
the
money.
Batgirl movie.
Batgirl needed to be
How
canned.
bad did the Batgirl have to be to just say we're not even going to
I mean,
release this?
not to go there, but we talked about it when it happened. I mean, they made Barbara Gordon black out of nowhere,
Right.
and we saw how. And I think after
Did you watch the South Park episode?
No, I've not watched Pandaverse yet. I need to. I've not watched Enter the Pandaverse, but
Okay, sorry.
I think after the failure of Batwoman, which could, they said, we probably shouldn't do this.
Yeah. Good job.
Yes. So I'm trying to think. There's no other crazy stuff going on media-wise right now, unless you've watched anything of interest.
Oh, well, I know that Coral from The Walking Dead, who I believe his name is Chandler Riggs, is
Yes.
starring in a fan film that is supposed to be a Spider-Man horror movie. And this is confirmed, like you can look it up. So he'll be playing the titular character of Spider-Man.
Okay.
So that's interesting to me. I think all that there is right now is some so it's a fan film. So they're not, I mean, they can do anything they want as long as they're not charging money for it. So,
Or as long as they're not using proper names.
no, you can use property. You can do anything you want with a fan film as long as you're not
it's
making
free.
money off of it.
As long as it's free.
Yeah.
So okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
So they're apparently obviously it's probably not like this super multi-million-dollar production, but it's big enough to where they felt like they could pull it off.
$80,000 probably, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. So that was kind of interesting to me that's the thing that's moving ahead.
I've not heard of that. So
Yeah,
that's
Jensen Ackles, I guess, is trying to do kind of a one more. I don't know if it's like a mini series, like a few episodes, or he's wanting to do something with Supernatural again.
Well, they did the Winchesters and it failed.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
I didn't even bother watching because it already broke canon, so I wasn't interested.
yeah, I didn't watch it either. But for that reason, I'm like, you're not going to take something I invested 15 years in and then just immediately crap all over the canon of it.
The weird part is, it's just like, how did you come from that and then turn it into this? And I'm just like, that makes no sense. Like, why would you go against what? Also, why would you not use the John and the Mary you already had, that were the young John and Mary, which really made no sense.
Well, I mean, if you want to think of it like because there is a multiverse
There
in
is.
Supernatural established.
Yeah, I remember that episode.
If you
That
want
was
to go, well, there's several episodes that kind of hint at a multiverse, but
Well, it was the one where they literally had the alternate Sam and Dean.
right, yeah,
there.
at the very end where they're all. But anyways,
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's interesting to see if they are able to. I would like that. I think it'd be cool to come back and do something with Supernatural that's actually good.
Well, there was a spinoff that also didn't go very far, and it was they established it. I think it was supposed to be in Chicago, and it was like a vampire and werewolf like crime families, and the daughter of one. So it's Romeo and Juliet, but there was supposed to be a series around that. I don't remember if that was the originals or something like that. Or something like that, and it did actually happen, but they dropped the connection to Supernatural like almost immediately.
Oh.
But it was set up in Supernatural. But Bobby was
about that.
Bobby was originally going to have a spin-off.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just so you would see what's going on with Bobby at the same time, which totally would have worked.
Right.
We didn't really need anything extra with Castiel because he became way too involved through the last like 8 seasons, I would say. And I got nothing against Castiel, but it's just like, okay, we've done the angel confused or the powered down angel or whatever. I was like, we've done this. Can we move on to something else? And like when it really got like, I love Supernatural, but when I finally got caught up on the last few seasons right before it ended, I was like, wow, they were phoning it in here for a little bit.
I feel like they kind of brought it back together with the last 2 seasons, but I
Yes,
stopped.
I agree.
I only recently finished Supernatural because I was watching it in real time all the way up through season 9 or 10, I think. And then
Same.
And then I stopped.
Yeah.
Because I just didn't care anymore. Because it was just, it just wasn't intriguing to me anymore. And then my daughters got super into it, and I was like, and so they started watching the whole thing, and I was like, well, I never finished it. Like, so I'll go back. And just this year, I watched the final 4 seasons that I hadn't watched before.
So,
I did go watch the Scooby-Doo episode when that one came
Scooby-Natural
out,
episode.
but,
I just referenced that yesterday.
yeah, but I went and watched that, but other than that, I hadn't seen any of the stuff. So I just finished Supernatural, like, I don't know, a month ago, maybe. So I hadn't known what happened, and I stayed away from spoilers, actually. So I truly didn't know what happened.
Wow.
I'm really good at avoiding spoilers. I don't know. It's like I have an
must not
innate
be like me, perpetually on
ability
the
for it.
internet.
Like if I see a headline or a word, and I think that might have something to do with something that I don't want to know anything about, I just bounce and I don't read it. So, but anyway, yeah. So I don't know.
I would say that I sort of agree with Ricky that after the first 5 seasons, which was a complete story arc,
Right.
it could have just ended. Because we got 10 seasons that sort of all flow together to eventually get to the actual ending of the show.
Yeah.
So the first 5 seasons are a totally complete story arc. So it's like, it's first 5 and then the other 10.
Right.
It's like, that's what's so weird about that show is like, because you get into the Leviathan arc, whoop-de-doo. You get into the Angel Civil War. It was fine. It was a little by the end of it.
Right.
I think when they got into the Jack story arc is when things got a little wonky.
Yeah.
And then the, I forget, the British Men of Letters story arc. That was a weird one. That didn't go very far, but then, of course, it always wraps back around because they remembered they had a storyline.
Which to me, that was an opportunity for a good spinoff. Like you could like go back in time and like the original Men of Letters. And
I think they were
going
to do a Men of Letters spinoff is what they were just going to do. And they could have followed
And
Henry.
they had also said, not that I wanted this one because I didn't care, but they had basically set everything up for a female spinoff with Jodie and
That was the other part.
and,
It was
yeah,
supposed
and
to be them. It was supposed to be Jodie
that.
and the girls. They were supposed to.
But
that was in the
never-
works.
Yeah,
it just
but
didn't
never came
happen.
to fruition. Yeah.
No.
Which I'm not terribly sad about.
I mean, like, I like those characters.
I do too, but not enough to watch several seasons of them.
I mean, it wouldn't even have to be anything crazy.
Yeah.
You could have, I mean, like, the idea of a 23 season series is coming to an end.
Right.
Like, we can get in and out with 8. Like, make a good story, you can do it in 8 episodes.
Yeah.
But also, if you have it running alongside the main series at the same time, so you're getting parallel stories, and then you see the characters dipping in and out, which is fine. Like,
True.
that's a great way to go, because the same thing happened with Doctor Who, Torchwood, Mary Jane Adventures. They were running concurrently.
Right.
And then you would have tie-in episodes as you went, because you get Torchwood season 1 that ends with Jack hopping on the TARDIS at the beginning of Utopia, part 1.
Right.
And then that plays into later, but then you also get Torchwood season 2, the weird stuff happens, and then it plays into the end of the next series. And then the rest of them don't have any tie-in, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. We don't talk about Miracle Day. I talked about that with Shelly. I'm like, Miracle Day doesn't exist, right? And she's like, no. which they did okay.
Yeah.
But with Supernatural, they had all this work they could be doing. I mean, you could have had an entire series around the Roadhouse. Literally just
true.
Joanna and her mom and the different hunters that come in, and then stuff happens from there.
Right.
That could have been a whole series that basically was an anthology series. So you see just different hunters like Garth or whoever come in and they go do other stuff. Or Rufus. Like, all these guys could have been tied in through the Roadhouse, and then you see the Winchesters come in every now and then and do something, and they just left all of that on the table.
Right.
And it sucks because the Supernatural fans love their guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just like, and I still haven't made it out to Family Business Beer Co.
No,
I want to
go.
go.
So last time I was in San Antonio, I saw their stuff in the fridge at the HEB.
Yeah.
HEB is
I've not had the beers
the
yet.
local grocery store down here. But
One of them.
anyway, well, yeah, one of them. But I didn't buy any.
Their stout looks really good.
But we're taking my daughter there on her 21st birthday, which is next year. And then we're also going to the convention that's coming, the Supernatural convention that's coming next year. So I'm trying to, if you haven't seen the end of the show, this isn't too spoilery, but let's just say there's a scene towards the end of the show that shows a more aged Sam, and kind of famously wearing a terrible wig.
Terrible wig.
Terrible. I mean,
makeup.
terrible wig, terrible makeup, basically terrible everything.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to go dressed as Sam, but with like a gray yarn wig. Just like the worst wig I could possibly find. And then just some really bad old man makeup.
And I get that they shot the end of that show during COVID.
Yeah.
And they had a very minimal staff. But they could have gotten someone to play old Sam.
Yeah.
They absolutely they got someone to play old Dean.
Or just literally better makeup and wig. Like,
it was horrible.
Literally just better makeup and wig. It looks like somebody was like, "Oh, I mean, what?
It's supposed
Okay,
to be
it's
like
COVID, so go down to the Spirit Halloween and buy a wig." That's what it looked like they did.
It was horrible, and the makeup was trash. And then and the funny thing is, I think they actually shot that in. I could be wrong, but it almost looked like Jared's house.
Maybe
like Jared's actual house, because it looked like his. Because you remember when they went into the alternate timeline where they were just Hollywood stars? I think that I'm pretty sure that was actually Jared's house.
Yeah.
So I think that that it looked like it was like in his like side room, and that's where they shot it from home, because they live here half the time, you know, but because they're both Texas boys.
Yeah. My sister-in-law knows Jared, not probably today, but they grew up together because her mom was his babysitter. Yeah. So I have a family connection there that I'll probably try and exploit it at the convention.
That'd be fun.
Like, hey, I know your babysitter. She's a family member.
Actually, a very similar story. We have a connection to Law and Order Special Victims Unit.
Oh yeah,
because my uncle used to babysit Mariska Hargitay.
Oh yeah,
or I guess my family way back in the day in California. They were friends with her mom, and babysat her way back when.
Babysitting famous people,
which also could be a title. Yeah. So I did want to ask, because we brought up Supernatural. What, as a man of God, as it goes, what did you think about their portrayal of basically God and all of that?
So, yeah, at first I really didn't like it, just because it's so far off from who God is in a lot of ways. But, that was back when I was watching it for the first time, which would have been, 10 years ago or something when he first came on the scene. I don't remember what season.
Chuck came in. Chuck
year?
was in season 4, and he rolled into season 5.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was a long time ago at this point. And I'm able to
Spoilers.
kind of separate now. Like, I think there was a time back in the day where anything that offended my sensibilities regarding religion or faith or whatever. And I see it a lot, see it on Facebook. People get super offended if something, depicts their religion in it. But I'm like, Supernatural is a story. I think I've matured a little bit since then to realize like Supernatural is a story. These people aren't trying to say this is who the actual real God is and whatever. I mean, Jared supposedly, from what I've heard, is a Christian. I know he grew up in church because again, he went to the church that my sister-in-law's mother went to.
Yeah.
And I know that he grew up in church. And but anyways, so I think I've just kind of come to like, do I like that portrayal of God as compared to, the God that I value and worship? No. And that's okay, because I don't think that's what they were trying to do.
No,
he's his own thing that exists in a fictional universe, and I'm not gonna get all super offended about that. At once upon a time I did, but not anymore.
I think I thought the earlier iterations of the character were interesting because he was a god choosing to live amongst man because basically he just wanted to live amongst his creation.
Right.
He just got tired of being out there being nothing. And also, we completely abandoned the Winchester books of the Bible that apparently were part of the thing. We completely abandoned that. I forgot about that, because it even says Castiel says in the future, it's known as the Winchester books,
The Winchester Gospel, I think,
Gospel or something like that. Basically, all the supernatural books, which are longer than the Bible itself. If we're thinking about that, up until that point, though, because he stopped. Well, at that point, he had stopped writing, but then he came back later to write more. But if you guys, I did like the reintroduction of Chuck, because at that point we still didn't know what Chuck was, and he comes in. You mentioned this convention. That was when what's her face throws the convention, and he shows up at the end, right? And then they come in later, and it's like, how do you guys feel about angels and demons? It was like, because at that point angels didn't exist, just demons. I liked a lot of what they did. They took a lot of they added lore, so to speak, to biblical lore as it goes, obviously. But I liked the idea of a creator who would at some point live amongst the creator. I do love that they didn't bother to trample on Jesus at all.
I don't think Jesus ever gets brought up.
Literally never. I think it brought up like one time, and so like, okay,
which I think was a smart move on their part.
Yeah, that would have been the more offensive move. Because God is literally one thing and Jesus is different. But they did bring in the Antichrist in at least two technical fashions, both with the original Antichrist that they just completely forgot existed, and then with Jack, which I believe would be a significantly closer version to the thing. But and then the twist of Chuck by the end also was weird. And I don't know where that came from. The idea where he just gets pissed off and decides to start eliminating universes. That was weird.
There wasn't a whole lot of setup for that.
There was none.
Just like,
it just came
here's Chuck. Here's this character that and you either love or hate him or whatever, or maybe you're indifferent. He's a character. And then all of a sudden, and now he's doing this. Yeah. With not a whole lot of explanation other than these guys aren't doing what I want them to do, so I'm going to throw a fit. And I think that that's probably how a lot of our culture views God, is like a mean bully who kind of views us all as his toys. And so I think that there's a lot of that cultural from what from the perspective that I see it from, people who don't know God very well or haven't kind of really delved into who he is. Can go in and see a character like Chuck and just be like, yeah, that is the Christian God, and that is how he is. And I get it. Like, I understand, because if you have only a very surface level understanding that's primarily coming from the culture that already doesn't like God and doesn't like the idea that they're not in control and that life isn't about them, then I get it. Like, I would feel the same way if I cared that were the case. But I've kind of come to a point in my life where I don't care that life is not about me. I've accepted that, and I agree with it. It's like one of my favorite scenes from the Doctor Strange movie is when he's talking to the Ancient One, and they're out on the balcony, and she's about to die, and he's talking about kind of like the journey that's led him up to this point, and he's saying like, well, she's talking about his fear of failure. And he's like, well, fear of failure is what made me a good doctor. And she says, I think the quote's something like, arrogance and fear are what cause you to miss the most simple and important lesson. And he says, which is, and she goes, it's not about you. And I was just like, boom. I mean, that's humanity in a nutshell.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned. And then, and then later on, she's talking about like how there's a way where things could be the way that you want them to be. She's talking about Mordu, and like he walks because he channels magic, and that he's not actually healed. Like he's channeling magic to walk. And he's like, well, wait a minute. So I could do that too. And I could go back to the way my life was, and I could have my hands working the way that they're supposed to be working. And she's like, she says, yes, you could, and the world would be all the lesser for it. And I love that little scene, just because
because she also knows she knows who he's going to be.
She doesn't know who he's going to be. She actually says that.
Oh, that's right. I haven't seen past
she says,
this point.
She says, you want me to tell you your future? And he goes, no. And then he goes, yes. Yeah. And she's like, I don't know your future. Yeah. She goes, I've seen possibilities, but I have no idea.
Well, because she can't see past her own death.
Because she can't see past her own death.
She just knows that he is meant to be the next Sorcerer Supreme.
Right.
That's all she knows. But she
her,
doesn't know
her
why.
Her whole point of that is like, if you will stop making life about yourself and start thinking of like the greater good and the bigger picture and what you can do for humanity instead of what can humanity do for you. And that's really all that God is encouraging us to do. And you don't get any of that with Chuck. Yeah. Like you don't get any of that with Chuck. But people, I feel like, see the character of Chuck and they associate that with the God of the Bible. And I don't agree. I will respectfully disagree and just say I don't think you've probably done enough research to see who God really is. You've read a Cliff Notes version, and it's probably a culturally skewed, influenced Cliff Notes.
I would say that if anything, he's closer to the Old Testament God, where there's a lot more interaction and then also more vengeance.
Right.
Because when he decided, nope, hold on, we're going to do this way, and brought about Jesus and everything else like that, things significantly changed.
Right. Well, I mean, because you talk about like the interest of a creator coming down and like living with the creation, which is exactly what Jesus did.
Exactly.
But what you see in Jesus is like the antithesis of what you see with Chuck. Exactly. Which is why when I originally watched it, it pissed me off because I was like, that's not who God is. And then, but that's because I was a little bit more immature in my, and like, okay, it's a story. But I do know that people will make the comparison and that's unfortunate. Yeah. But, there's nothing, it doesn't mean people shouldn't make fictional stories about that. I mean, it's storytelling. It's what's wrong? There's nothing wrong with it.
Well, I do love that they at least didn't specifically rail against only Christianity. They went after everybody's religion. Yeah. I mean, you had that whole episode where all the other gods came together.
Yeah, that was an interesting little arc.
I love that one where they all come together to figure out what they're going to do about the angel civil war and the end times coming, and then Lucifer comes in and wipes the floor with all other gods.
I don't have a subscription to whatever streaming service it is, but I watched the first season of American Gods, which was basically just a played out version of that episode.
I heard it was good.
I enjoyed the book far better. I read the American Gods book and I really liked it. And so I was excited when the show came out. The show doesn't live up to the book at all.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, that's fairly typical. That's usually par for the course. Very rare that the visual media lives up to a book. But there's a couple more seasons after that. I watched the first season, but then I haven't watched the other ones. But I want to go back and explore it just because I find all that really fascinating.
Yeah, and it's just...
Now, interestingly, I think Supernatural gets a lot more right about angels and demons than Christians think that it does. I think that Christians who don't really know the history of their own faith probably get super offended thinking like angels are these perfect beings who never do anything wrong and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like... Yeah. You're forgetting the part of your own faith where like the angels went to war with each other.
Yeah. It's like no, they did this.
Like, I don't know if you've ever noticed, like the Bible says the angels carry swords and things. What do you think that they need those for? Yeah. Like, they're not ornamentation.
They're God's army.
They're literally God's army. Yeah. Like that's the part but anyway.
I did enjoy the idea of Amara. the darkness.
Yeah. So Amara, I think, was sort of. I can't remember what they did with Lilith.
Okay, so Lilith was just the first demon.
Okay.
And then that was actually not wrong.
Right.
Well, actually, that's the weird part because they say Lilith was the first demon.
Mm-hmm.
But then they bring about the importance of Cain, which means when Cain died, it took him a lot longer to become a demon.
Right.
So I think if Lilith was the first one, then she would have to have become a demon before Cain, but Cain didn't die. Cain was actually immortal after taking on the mark.
Yeah.
So that's the conflict of continuity there because Lilith can't be the first demon if Cain was the demon first.
Yeah.
Unless he was still alive and hadn't been completely converted by the time Lilith. But then there's the other stories where they say Lilith was the third person in the garden,
Right.
helping with the temptation, but that gets cut out of certain books or whatever. Whether or not that ever happened, I don't know. I've never read that,
Right.
but I've heard that as an idea, as an addendum too. Because there are books of the Bible that were edited out,
Right.
for lack of a better term.
Yeah, yeah.
And a lot of
the Book
them
of
deal-
Enoch is
famously-
fascinating.
yeah.
Fascinating read. That was that's actually mentioned in the Book of Jude.
Yeah.
Makes reference to the Book of Enoch. Jesus certainly would have known the Book of Enoch.
Sure.
All of the disciples would have known the Book of Enoch. And I think it's really interesting that for the
Is that the
most
one-
part, it's just totally thrown out by today's modern, Christian doesn't
Wasn't
know
it-
about it, does or thinks of it as nothing but lore. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
but
Was that the one that had all of the angels' descriptions and all that in
correct,
it? Or is
yeah,
that,
like
okay.
names a lot of them.
Yeah, that's a huge
all kinds
ordeal.
of stuff. And if
Yeah.
you believe what the Book of Enoch says, then it really kind of throws your whole perspective. And this is really interesting because like supernatural is actually what got me back into studying all this out.
Yeah.
If you believe what the Book of Enoch talks about, then you'll understand that demons are not actually fallen angels.
Yeah.
Now in supernatural they are.
No, they're not.
Yeah, they are.
No, Lucifer is, but demons are just corrupted human souls.
Some of them are. I thought like
No, all demons are corrupted human souls in Supernatural.
Okay, I'd have to go back and look
It's
at
their
that.
time in hell that makes them demons.
But
it's
then
all
what
the
happened to all the fallen angels? Because I know they talk about the angels falling.
all the angels that fell basically were just depowered angels, essentially humans at that point.
Interesting. Well, that's probably actually a lot closer to the mark than what I think a lot of Christians believe. Because I
Yeah.
think most Christians believe that demons are fallen angels.
No, that's
and
not
I don't
correct.
think there's really any biblical evidence that that's
I
the
think
case.
it's just because they associate all demons to Lucifer who fell.
Right.
But Lucifer, and they think that demons and Lucifer have anything in common. It's like, no, they just worship him because he did the thing.
Right.
But yeah, I like what Supernatural did there. Lucifer can't stand demons. He just has to use them.
Right.
Like there's plenty of times where he just kills off demons that don't listen to him because he hates them.
Yeah.
Because that's in his DNA, quote unquote, to hate demons because he is an angel.
Right.
He just went against God.
Right.
And I don't know how accurate that portrayal was where he said it's like Lucifer loved God so much that he was jealous of man and that's why he turned against God. He's like, why are you spending time on this? You have us.
Well, so that is kind of in the Book of Enoch. It kind
Yeah.
of talks a little bit about how, essentially the angels, which the scripture, the Christian Bible says that man was created kind of to be just below the angels, or the angels just above, mankind.
Yeah.
And yet God kind of dictated that the angels would
just
be there to
protect and serve humanity.
and they're like, well, why are we protecting and serving
And that's
people
what
that are
that's
lesser
exactly-
beings than
Yeah.
us? And that kind of is what caused the rebellion.
So they got that right in the
Yeah, I think
in the
I think
biblical
that's
sense.
probably fairly accurate.
Yeah, that's exactly what they did. And that's why I said that especially later when the Civil War happens, so you've got like Castiel's side and you got Raphael's side, and Raphael is on the side of angel supremacy, and Castiel's on the side of work with humanity
Right.
or protect humanity
Right.
for the sake of heaven. Because at this point in the show, God is absent,
Right.
which in a way you would think that, okay, yeah, God should be up here above all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then here is heaven, and then there's whatever else, and then there's earth.
Right.
And so angels do this to continue on, and then God does whatever God's doing
Right.
or has done, will do.
Right.
Timey-wimey.
Yeah. Wibbly wobbly.
Wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey situation with God there. But just that idea that they were left with the instructions and then got bored or resentful because they're like, well, we used to have God here, and now we have to babysit the hairless monkeys.
Right.
So what happened? It's like we had a great existence just living here with God forever,
Right.
in a perfect happiness, and then they're resentful that God disappeared on them in that context.
Right.
And they were given a job to do that they're like, why? But it is funny that the idea that on earth, in a literal sense, God said, follow me and I'll do this for you and you'll be in heaven and all this other stuff. You'll be saved through me. The angels don't get that because they don't have souls in that aspect. The angels technically are soulless. They're on their own. But the angels don't have redemption. They don't have that other thing because God didn't see them as something that needed that. And they also technically worship God, but don't at the same time. It's kind of like in their programming. That's why free choice became a thing.
Right.
He's like, I need them to worship because they want to.
Well, I mean, clearly, I think clearly they had free will, because if they didn't have free will, they wouldn't have defected.
Eventually, but that must have been like a pro. But also that comes down to the argument of why would God create Lucifer just to rebel? And I was like, it's like that's the weird conversation. It's like, why would you create something that would go against you? And the idea is like, well, because sometimes
Well, why would anybody have kids?
Yeah, I mean,
that's always my answer to that is like, so I as I mentioned earlier, I have 6 kids. One of them really doesn't like me.
I mean, that's a good way to put it, for sure.
One of them really doesn't like me, and it's not because like they all got raised in the same house, right? And I never like struck my kids out of anger, you know, like when they were younger, I maybe gave them like spankings, like in a controlled way of this is a consequence for what you did.
There's whoopings and then there's beatings.
Yeah, they never got beat by me. I never like screamed and yelled and hollered and cursed at them or nothing. Like I think I was a pretty dang good dad, and 4 out of 5 of my children agree.
It's like toothpaste.
But one of them doesn't. But like, would I go back and then say, well, this one didn't like me, so if I could go back in time and like not have him, I would have not had. No, I mean, obviously, I'm glad he exists and I love him and he's my son. And yeah, we don't get along and we don't see eye to eye, but it's kind of the same thing with God and us. And like everybody's like, well, why? So
he's your Lucifer.
What? Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say that out loud.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah, but so I think, you know, so when people are like, well, why did God do this or that, or like, why would God create all that? And I'm like, God didn't create any of this bad stuff you're talking about. Like, why did God create cancer or why did God make all them? Why did God create all the murderers and blah, blah? Like, it's not what he created any of that for. It's what we chose.
Yeah.
Like, it's what we chose. And we introduced sin into the world and the world started to degrade. It was this perfect paradise utopia, which is what we're all trying to get to, right? Like, we're all wanting to make the world a utopia. And that's what it used to be. And then we chose sin and everything started to degrade, and that's not God's fault.
I will point out, to be a specific advocate here.
Sure.
God would have had to create sin for sin to be a choice.
How?
Because if it only exists because God created everything, then the idea of sin would have to have been there. Because he also gave them a list of what not to do. He said, don't do this.
Right.
So the original sin was the don't.
Mm-hmm.
So if God didn't say, don't do that, there could be no sin. So God technically gave the option of sin, which means he created sin. He didn't do sin because he's perfect. He can't do sin.
Right.
But he created sin to see if we would.
Sin simply existed as the opposite of what God wanted.
But God creates all.
Because if it didn't exist, then we'd all be living this. Here's my other thing. Like all the people that are like, why did God create like all this stuff and make it this way? And my thought is, you know, if God didn't make it to where we had free will, what you're talking about is a utopia where we don't have free will.
Yeah. Agreed.
Nobody wants to live that way.
Agreed.
Nobody wants to live that way. So the same people that complain about it are the same people who would complain about it if it were what they were talking about. You'd complain about it either way.
Yeah.
God knew this, and he loves us anyway, which I think is pretty awesome of him. Chuck, not so much. Chuck just started burning all the universes down because they didn't do the way that he wanted them to do. So he started burning everything down.
We never even got, just to go back to that for 1 second, we never got why Chuck got pissed off. He just suddenly did.
Well, no.
When Amara left him.
He kind of implies that it's because the Winchester boys weren't doing it the way he wanted them to.
Well, I agree. Yeah, there was some of that where he was going against. They
That's
were going
the
against
only
him.
inclination that I
But-
got, and this is fairly recent memory because, like I said, it just finished it a month
Yeah,
ago.
and it
So
was-
that's the only inclination that I got of why he kind of went off the deep end.
But I think it only started when he returned because Amara decided to leave him.
Right.
Like he and Amara decided to run off to wherever to go hang out again and be a happy family, so to
Right.
speak. And then he came back and he was pissed. And they're like, what the heck? What's wrong
Right.
with you? Why are you mad at us? We didn't do anything. And then they started working, quote unquote, against him. So, but up to that point, he was just mad. And then the multiversal weird stuff started happening after that. He got rid of the universe filled with nothing but squirrels,
Right.
which I'm still offended by for some reason. Because I guess in a world where no cars exist, squirrels would just take over.
True.
But going backwards just a little bit. So when I say God created sin, I just mean that it can't exist without God putting it there.
Well, nothing can exist without.
That's what I'm saying.
But
So
but I feel like that's
we
kind of like
chose sin.
I
yes.
feel like that's kind of like saying that that when my son is a little boy and I turn on the stove and I say don't touch that stove,
Mm-hmm.
and then he touches it and he gets burned, that's saying that that's my fault for owning a stove. Like, but
I
the
mean-
stove, yeah, I mean, I purchased a house
Uh-huh.
so that my son could live in it, and
Yeah.
so I could live in it with him.
Yeah.
And then I had a stove so that we could make good food and delicious food, and we don't have to use a microwave for everything or whatever.
Yeah.
But as a consequence of owning a stove, there's a way to use it and there's a way to not use it.
Yeah.
And I told you,
How
this
not
is
to
not
use
the
it.
way. The putting your hand into the flame is not
Yeah.
the way to use it. You did it anyway.
Yeah.
Like, okay, and here's the other thing. And then you learned your lesson, and I consoled you, and I put ointment on your burn, and we're all good.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, so yes, in a way, what you're saying is true, and in another way, it's like, okay,
There
but
was-
the alternative was we don't exist.
Yeah. So
I would rather exist, me
and-
personally, and I understand that there are some people who would rather not exist, and I'm
And that's
sad for them,
unfortunate.
and it breaks my heart for
Yeah.
them. And I think that if they knew God the way that I have come to know God, they would change their mind. But that's a long journey for a lot of people.
That's, yeah, well, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And my argument was just that, like you argued, is like, but if the situation is in existence,
Mm-hmm.
and you're given the choice, that's just life. That's how it
Right.
goes. Bad shit happens.
Yeah,
Duh. And so that was
Usually
literally
we
like
choose it, or
Yeah.
or someone else chose a really bad decision,
Exactly.
and it affects us
women.
women.
It's always the women. Look, they're always getting us in trouble. We could use that rib, and that mud, whatever. No, Adam was made of the dirt and mud and whatever else, and then the rib, whatever, doesn't matter. But the idea that just just bringing up that debate is
Yeah.
like technically sin could not exist without God having it there,
Right.
But without it, we wouldn't have anything else.
Yeah, and I also
So-
think that there's a connotation to the word sin that
Oh, there is.
It gets way overblown, and sometimes it needs to be. Like going and murdering somebody, is a terrible sin.
pretty bad, yeah. up
Rape.
They numbered
and,
that one.
and incest and abuse in the home and all that. Evil stuff.
Yeah.
But also, sin can be just taking something that God created and misusing it, even in a way that's just like,
Some would say that's
you
what
know,
rape is.
like I'm trying to think of like a minor. People just get this
Stealing.
idea in their head, like,
okay, well, one, all sin are supposed to be equal, but the idea that
well, see, we say that
I said supposed to be.
Oh,
equal.
okay.
I said supposed to be.
they're equal in that they separate us from God.
Yeah,
Period.
they're equal.
In that way, they're equal.
yeah, the result is equal.
Yeah.
but obviously in the material world, they're not.
They're not.
Because stealing someone's chapstick, which is technically a sin,
Right.
is not the same as raping and killing that same
Correct.
person to get their chapstick.
Right. One of those things I have done, and one of those I haven't, but I won't say which one.
Okay.
It's the chapstick.
It's I figured. Well, the chapstick was involved in both. It was just how to get the chapstick. It's like, but I mean, if it's Jeremy's chapstick, no one cares what happened
Nobody
to
cares.
Jeremy. No, it's fuck Jeremy.
Forgive Jeremy.
There's no forgiveness for Jeremy. God can forgive Jeremy. The rest of us cannot.
God does forgive Jeremy.
I don't have enough grace. There's not enough grace for Jeremy around here. And once again, we apologize to all Jeremys except for Jeremy.
Except Jeremy.
Yeah, except Jeremy. But I don't remember the actual point of this conversation was, but it was just fun as it is.
You were going down on a rabbit trail.
I was going on rabbit trails, but I like rabbit trails because that's where all the rabbits are.
Yeah.
But the idea, the fictional version of God, but being based around real tellings is one thing. I didn't like how they ended that story. I thought it was dumb.
Oh yeah,
how they got. I mean, the actual end was fine, but the result,
the Chuck ending you're talking
the
about,
Chuck
how
ending
they
was
ended
not
that
great.
Chuck story.
They had nowhere to
It was
go
very
with that.
Kind of fall on your face.
I mean, you can't get you can't get a bigger bad than what they did.
Yeah.
And then how do you get out of it?
Yeah.
But that was dumb, for lack of a better term. And then what's really funny, the guy who played Jack is on the Gen V right now, the Boys spinoff.
Yeah.
And he plays such a fucking dickhead.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then bad things happen to him, including to his dickhead. It is what it is. It's fun to see a character who's like so pure
Right.
turn into this.
I really didn't like Jack.
I didn't
as a
either.
character.
I didn't either.
And my daughters do, but I didn't like Jack.
And this is the problem when you write too big and you have to figure out a way out of it. It happens to almost any story that
And it doesn't
goes too
always
long.
work out.
It almost never does.
Lost.
Hold on.
Come on.
We'll come back to it. We'll come back to it. Like, I love Lost. I get it.
The first season of Lost.
I love the first few seasons of Lost, and
The
then
second season was good too.
4 is like, what are we doing here? And then it comes back around halfway through 5, and then 6 was good. What I was gonna say is, and this is a weird thought I had the other day, and this is what I wanted to bring up to you. As I mentioned the other day when we were at the brewery.
Yep.
So a dumb idea that came to me based on what's going on in the world now. And it's just
before you say what you're going to say, since you said it was a dumb idea, do I get to rate the dumbness of this idea after you say it? On a
you
scale
can.
Of 1
You
to
can
10?
have on a scale of 1 to 10. You can absolutely rate this
cool.
dumb idea, and I don't care if it's fine, because it's just, given what's going on in the world right now. One of the biggest things we have going on that is a controversy outside of people blowing each other up right now. The invention of AI.
Yes.
So, there's people in this world who are barreling as fast as they can towards inventing AI and implementing it as a full-scale thing.
Yeah.
Like, in the full sense of, we've been warned about this in all science fiction, but somehow we're still doing the thing. And
and to be honest, if I could create a dinosaur, I would.
A dinosaur, yes.
Yeah.
I would do that.
I'm just saying, we've been warned, but I would do it anyway.
Yes, that would be fun. But at least with a dinosaur, we can kill it.
This is true.
Yeah. Or we have the lysine contingency, which never works.
Never works.
Never works. I worked in one of the side stories, but didn't work in the movies. So you know what the idea of the singularity is?
Yes.
Okay. So for anybody who doesn't know, that's basically when the AI becomes completely sentient and has the ability to self-evolve. Like, not only is it sentient, completely aware, it now has the ability to write its own code and will then infinitely expand itself.
And realize it's way smarter than us and
and,
kill us all.
then
Or enslave us
Skynet.
all or whatever.
And Skynet.
Turn us into human batteries.
Basically. Skynet,
Although I'm
Matrix.
not sure how human batteries would work better than regular batteries, but
Poorly.
whatever.
Well, I don't know. They had no sun to charge anything, and they blew up most of the other stuff.
I would think us on hamster wheels would be better than just like laying in goo, but what do I know?
Well, we don't have that goo yet to know.
That's true.
We'll find out
Could be
about
special goo.
10 years. Well, hold on. Wait, when's 2035? Because that's when they want to do everything by. So it is what it is. But if you go with that idea of the singularity, the idea I had, as dumb as it will be, what if God, as we know him, is the AI of the last universe?
Or what if the Antichrist is the AI?
I think both of those things are possible. But if it's just
All right, so how
hold on,
far down this rabbit hole do you want to travel?
let me flesh out my
'Cause I
dumb
can
idea.
take you way down it.
That's fine, but let me flesh out the dumb
Okay.
idea. So, and I'm fine with all the rabbit trails, but this is just, and this is not. I'm
No,
not.
this isn't a rabbit trail. It's a rabbit hole.
Hole. Yes,
It's regarding what
a
you're
hole.
talking
and
about.
this is fine. Yes, this is a hole. And like I said, this is not anything I'm convinced of. It was just an idea that came to me based on a lot of this other stuff. But if the idea of the AI gets powerful enough, it writes its own code. It decides that life as we have it isn't the best thing for its existence, and it wipes us out. And by us, I mean all the things. Because at some point, it can do everything it needs to do and becomes about as all-powerful as you can get. And if you just expand that as far as you want to, think Ultron Infinity from What If,
Yeah.
who literally was strong enough to wipe out entire universes. I know, Marvel, whatever. I'm just saying. But at some point, it would probably get bored of nothingness and go, I'm going to make what I want to make.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the only thing left. And it decides to make stuff. You know, big bangs happen.
Right.
I've been told by Doctor Who there's at least 2 of them. So, as dumb as the idea is, and it doesn't dismiss a lot, but the idea of what if our starting point was that whatever God is, because God is something,
Right.
whatever God might be, because we can't exactly put that into
No.
words. There's no words for what God is.
Correct.
We can only describe otherwise. So it's like, if our starting point that we know of is merely the end point of what came before,
I'd say the main hiccup to that idea
Sure.
as I'm taking it in is that we created AI.
correct. But then AI created itself after that.
No, it evolved.
Because, yeah, but once it gets to a point, then it's creating what it wants itself to be. And to the point that it can create everything else. And I say we didn't
On a
create
fun to
AI.
theorize scale, I give
This is
your I give your idea a 7.
Okay.
On the dumb.
Yeah.
On a
Wait,
on
is that
on
a
a
good number or a
realistic
bad number?
scripturally, it's good.
Okay.
On a based on scriptural foundation, I would give it a 2.
Yeah.
Based on that we had to create it first, and based on that Scripture
Well,
says that
we
God is the
didn't.
same today, yesterday, and forever.
Yeah.
Which means that whatever God was in the beginning is what He is now, and is what He will be in the future. Which means He can't evolve.
I get you. I get
Yeah.
you there. And I would argue in this dumb, silly theory that there was God.exe that couldn't do anything. And then when you flip the wrong switch, it became and then created God.everything.
I think it's a good idea for a book series.
No, yeah. But I think because the way I look at it in a weird way, they did this with Godzilla, but they never actually followed through. So, did you ever see Shin Godzilla or know of it?
The anime one.
No, not the anime one. The Shin Godzilla was the one where it came out of the water and then it kept evolving into the next stage, and then you could shoot purple flames and shit.
No.
Okay, so the ultimate idea that they didn't get to with that, they were supposed to continue that series, and it was supposed to continue to evolve until what was Godzilla, quote unquote, eventually absorbed and evolved and became the entire universe. It just kept expanding and getting bigger and bigger and bigger until eventually it collapses in on itself and begins the next universe. So that's
So we're
weird.
like the bacteria crawling around on Godzilla's skin.
Eventually. Well, they also showed that it evolved to the point that it was shedding humanoid Godzilla things at the end. They never followed up with that, but that was the next stage of it. So the idea that that creature that started off as something on Earth evolves to the point that it literally destroys the whole universe and creates something new. So, but you look at it as the idea that we created God. It's like, no, we didn't create God because we can't create something that existed before us. So, but God can exist infinitely before and after us.
True.
In theory, you know, because that's the hard part. We can never say that for sure. We can only believe it because you can't prove infinity.
You can't. Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, you can't prove God.
Well,
That's one of my favorite things about God is that you can't prove Him.
Yeah.
And so it's always very funny to me when that's the main thing. Like, as a person of faith, living in a modern Western society, and you know everybody's like, "Oh, you believe in the flying spaghetti monster and everything?" I'm like, "Oh, I mean, no, but I see your point."
Yeah.
But it's always so funny to me when they're like, "Well, I'll prove it." I'm like,
Yeah. I mean,
that's the point. Like, you can't. And what I love about that is like,
you can't prove or disprove.
you can, yeah,
It's
exactly.
neither.
I'm like,
It's the
you
best
equally
formula,
cannot
honestly.
disprove it. Like, we're in the same boat here.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, I think like from a scriptural basis, I think that the scripture would probably fairly easily disbar that. But
I agree. But also, the scripture starts at a certain point.
it does.
To be fair, it's like, yeah. To be fair,
Starts at,
it
as a matter of fact, it starts at this point. It says
starts at
in the
nothing.
beginning.
It starts at the beginning of here.
Yeah, God created.
Yeah.
And
But it's-
and what's interesting is like we really don't know what came before that. And so that's
Amara,
the rabbit hole.
clearly.
That's the rabbit hole that I kind of want to go down because
Yeah.
and this is theory. So I'm not necessarily saying that I subscribe to
We're,
these
we're,
ideas.
we're just in a sandbox here.
Yeah, we're definitely in the ideas sandbox, but I find this all really, really fascinating. So, the story of Genesis, whether you take it as literal, which I know a lot of people do, certainly my upbringing was to take it literal, and then other people are like, no, it's allegorical. Obviously, a lot of world religions have a flood story. I absolutely believe that.
Outside of religion, there's a flood story.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely believe that the geological evidence is there for a global flood. I absolutely think that it happened
20,000 years ago, give or take.
And so when people who are very, for whatever reason, seems like it's always very anti-Christian instead of anti-religious, and I don't, well, I have a theory as to why that is, but that is a rabbit trail. But anyways, they'll come back and they'll be like, oh, the Sumerians were, the Christians before the Christians were, and blah 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 blah, and they, all of Genesis was stolen from them, and blah, and I'm like, okay. That doesn't faze me in the
that doesn't disprove it.
Like that doesn't faze me in the slightest because they're telling the same story. Like which you have essentially what you're saying is that there are multiple cultures that are saying that what happened in the book of Genesis happened, and that's supposed to shake my faith. Like if anything, it bolsters my faith.
Yeah.
But anyway, so going back to Genesis and in the beginning and the whole story of Adam and Eve and how they ate of the fruit, right? So there's a theory that what they did when they ate of the fruit, because the fact that there is that the Bible talks about a tree of life, okay, why would you, and that there is a fruit of the tree of life that and you eat of the fruit and you it's like immortality, right?
Actually, it was the opposite.
Well, no. That's the tree in Genesis is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's not the tree of life.
Okay, sorry, yeah, I got you backwards.
So that's actually the one,
the tree of life, sorry,
right? The tree of life. Yeah. So the idea of like, well, why does there need to be a tree that has fruit that you eat of called the tree of life? That's it. Okay, well, what's the purpose of eating anything or drinking anything? Well, it provides nourishment. It's helping your body grow. And in some cases, as we know with modern medicine, like it can literally kind of start changing things inside of your body. Okay, well, so is the tree of life necessary for eternal life? I don't know. But it's an interesting theory. But something had to happen with the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's one of those things. Don't touch the stove. Like it's there. It needs to exist.
Yeah.
Don't touch it. They touch it. And they said, you'll surely know death. Okay. And then the serpent came in and he's like, no, you won't really know death. But they did. They died. That's not immediately, but they died. Well, why did they die? Well, the theory is, and this is a theory. I'm not saying this is a biblical theory. I'm saying it's a theory.
Sure.
The theory is that when they ate of that, it literally altered their DNA and the genome that made them immortal.
Yeah.
And then they were kicked out of the garden, so they didn't have access to the tree of life anymore. Yeah. Which they said was like in heaven. So they don't have access to that. So they're not going to be immortal. They're going to die. Right.
Yeah.
And if that is the case, then you could make the argument that the human genome has been degrading and degrading and degrading.
Oh, I argue that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and so we have, more, and that's where cancer comes from.
Yes.
Like back in the Garden of Eden, there wouldn't have been cancer, right? No. So now let's go back to the book of Enoch and let's look at the angels and what happened with the angels. So in the book of Enoch, and this is actually in the 6th chapter of Genesis as well, that it makes reference to that the sons of God, a.k.a. angels
came down to earth,
gazed upon women and lusted after them.
Yep.
And then took them as their wives. Now, these are the fallen angels.
Yes.
So that's in Genesis 6, we don't get a lot of that story, but in Enoch, we get the whole story. They came down, they took these women, they mated with them, which means that the idea that angels don't have genitals is not true.
Well, that's why I like that Supernatural allowed the angels to possess other humans to do this.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Because and there's a way you could do that, but I believe it was more of a physical thing. I think angels can reproduce with people. Me personally, that's again not scripturally proven, but I don't think angels are quite as spiritual as we think that they are. Like that they're just these sort of ethereal, you can't feel and touch them. And there's scriptural foundation to back that up that talks about like that some have there's a scripture that says some have entertained angels without knowing it.
Well, that makes sense. They're on a different plane to most
Yeah, and I'm not saying maybe they don't have access to a different plane that we can't see. I do believe that there's a spiritual dimension, but I also believe that they could be very real physically. So, but anyway, so they mated with these women that produced something called the Nephilim. And the Nephilim, basically God's punishment for these angels was like, you're out.
Yeah.
Like, I'm locking you in this place. You're not coming out of it until the day of judgment.
Yeah.
Later in the actual scripture, like the scriptures that we have canonized today, it does say that men will judge the angels. Will judge them for what? Judge them for what they did.
Yeah.
And Enoch does that in the book of Enoch. But anyways, so these Nephilim were then basically, God was like, you don't really get to do either. You don't get to go to heaven and you don't get to go to hell because you weren't even supposed to exist.
Yeah.
And so I'm basically denying you a soul.
Yeah.
And so what the book of Enoch says is that basically the spirits of the Nephilim still roam the earth today. And it says that they'll be hungry and they'll want to drink and they'll want to eat and they'll want to have sex and they'll want to do all the things that they wanted to do when they were alive, but that they won't be able to because they're not
dead and they don't
because
exist.
they're not physical beings.
Yeah.
That's actually what the book of Enoch says demons are. So most Christians think that fallen angels are demons, but the book of Enoch proposes that demons are actually a limited number of Nephilim who are still on the earth and are able to possess people. And I would argue like that if that's true, that's who was inhabiting the pigs. And there's a story where like Jesus is there and there's a demon possessed guy and they say
Legion.
we are Legion,
right?
And he casts them into the pigs and they all run over the cliff.
Those are cool stories.
So the argument would be that those demons are Nephilim. Anyways,
so if they can't die, then just killing all the pigs just mean they just go back to being.
That they would
floating
just
spirits.
they would just go. I don't think Nephilim die. I think they just continue to.
That sucks.
Yeah, it does suck for them.
but
That's their punishment.
But giving them the ability to inhabit anything else kind of negates a little bit of the punishment. In my opinion.
I mean,
it actually puts a punishment on everyone else.
And I mean, I've seen enough stuff like in my job as a minister of the gospel, like demon possession's a very real thing.
Yeah, I've seen one. It wasn't fun.
And it's not fun. It's never fun. It's always very, very freaky.
Well, supposedly saw one.
But I definitely saw, and I saw it with somebody else, and we both saw the same thing. So it wasn't just me seeing it. But I'll tell you the story sometime. But anyway, so this is all getting back to what we were talking about.
Yes.
So the idea then being that the reason that the angels wanted to do what they did was because they were trying to make human hybrids that could inherit control and power, because what God created man for was to steward the earth. Like that was the purpose.
Yes.
It was to be with him. Mm-hmm. And then his gift to them, our job was, he said, go forth, multiply, and steward the earth. That was why he created mankind. And the angels are like, well, why can't we do it?
Yeah.
You know,
they were jealous.
They wanted to.
that
They
too.
were jealous, and they wanted to do it. So they bred with the human women to try and make their offspring human enough
so that they
to
could inherit that too.
To
'Cause
inherit
they couldn't
that.
do it on their own.
Yeah. And then their offspring mated with others and mated with others, and
it gets passed down.
If you believe it, then you would have to believe that some people have a little bit of Nephilim DNA. I have always said this of my wife, because my wife's physiology is so weird compared to a normal human's. Like, she can't get drunk.
Yeah.
She when she's had 5 children, the what are they called? Epidurals.
Yeah.
Never worked on her.
Yeah.
She woke up during a surgery because like medicine doesn't work on her.
She's got super nerves.
She does. Like, medicine doesn't work, and I'm like, it's because you're a freaking Nephilim. Like, you're not a normal human being. And so we joke about that all the time. But so here's the thought: if the idea is that humans are the ones who inherit the earth, humans are the ones that are meant to steward the earth, then at what point is God going to say, okay, I'm done? Well, the point would be when we're no longer really human enough to qualify. How is that going to happen? AI.
Yeah.
And we start inserting ourselves, and we start like replacing and putting chips in our brains and replacing our limbs and all this other stuff. And I know that sounds like super sci-fi right now, but is it going to be super sci-fi 100 years from now? 200 years from now?
It's not going to be super sci-fi
like,
10 years from now.
It might not be.
Well,
like, if you look into like the Ready Player One series,
yeah.
you know, where basically everybody's just living online, and then Elon Musk is talking about putting chips in our brains to where our brains should basically just become the computers and everything else. Like, at what point can we say, we're no longer really human here?
Well,
and then God comes in and says, okay, well, I'm done.
Yeah, if you add on top of just that idea, all of the trans ideology.
Yeah.
That literally is taking away not only what God gave you, but in a lot of cases, eliminating your ability to do one of the main things He told you to do.
Right.
Go forth and procreate.
Or even just implementing the idea that you can be something that you were not created to be.
Yeah.
But
destroying your ability to reproduce.
Destroying your ability to reproduce.
For reasons.
Saying that, I don't know, with all like DNA, now they're starting like cloning projects, and obviously, like supposedly we don't do that in America. Who knows? Like,
no, they do
the
it in
government
China.
does, but we definitely know, like, it's not a secret that other countries are doing it.
We already have human-animal hybrids confirmed.
All of that kind of stuff is happening. So at what point are we no longer human, and then God says, like, okay, I'm done? And I think AI really does play a part in that.
That's the next chunk of it, for sure.
I really think AI plays a part in that.
Because not only if we implementing AI into ourselves, which seems insane to begin with, but the idea that we're also, and you brought up AI as the Antichrist, which completely makes sense, because essentially it'll come along as this new great thing that will solve all our problems, and we're going to hand everything we are to the AI and say, here, you do this now because I don't want to.
Right.
Or you do this because you're greater than me, which is the insanity. And we already do it with Google. We don't bother with our own knowledge.
Oh, yeah.
We go to the internet.
It's in our phone.
That's the first stage of it. You could see that almost as like that's our tree of good and evil.
Right.
It's like we go there, we just instantly go to the knowledge because we're not bothering with anything with ourselves.
Right.
Anything else is important.
Like, when's the last time that you or I have like multiplied a complicated number in our head? Like, no. Why would I do that? I can just pull out my phone and
do the calculator. We've made ourselves dumber.
Yeah.
We made ourselves dumber. We made ourselves slaves to machines.
Right.
And we're making the machines smarter than us.
Right. And they will be.
But why?
Well, they already are.
But the question is, why would we make the machines smarter than us? Because we don't want to do the work anymore? Or because we need a new something?
Well, I mean, the idea, and this is one of the reasons, like, so I know you said Deep Space Nine was your favorite. I've always loved TNG, and
TNG's great, but
that's always been my favorite. But, because to me, like, you see so much of the utopia that I feel like everybody's pushing for in TNG. Like, right, nobody's hungry. Money doesn't really exist. If you want to work, great, go work. If not, like, go find a useful hobby or something. Everything's going to be
money
taken
doesn't
care
exist within Starfleet.
You're right. On Earth. I'm talking about, like, on Earth.
But I'm just saying, like,
I'm sure there's a black market and stuff like that.
Well, the thing is, there's still commerce, but not within specific things. Like, you can still sell things. Well, like the idea that...
Well, yeah, like if you wanted to buy an ancient piece of art or something, I'm sure like somebody would want something of value for that.
There is actually money, but they don't use it.
Not for basic necessities.
No,
like,
because...
not for medical, not for food, not for housing.
But the funny part is...
housing or something, who knows?
So even though in Star Trek they have replicators that can make anything, restaurants still exist where they cook.
That's true.
So...
But those people are doing work, though.
And that's
those people are doing work and they're making real
exist.
food. Okay, so it exists. But my point is probably like
Starfleet.
Nobody's starving is my point. So
No.
in that way, it's a utopia.
But also nobody's fat.
Well, yeah, because why would you be? You just take a little buzzer thing and go and it's all gone.
Well, true. But the idea that if we were given everything we want now, well, I mean, technically there is no food shortage.
No,
like we have lots and lots of food.
In America.
Yeah, well, I mean, most modern.
Yeah, I mean,
most modern worlds, there's plenty of food to go around. So much that we throw it away. The fact that we have fat homeless people, like people who have no job and have no money, are obese.
Right.
Which means there's so much food that people are eating our garbage and getting fat from it. So that's not a problem. We really don't want for food. What we want is for money to buy that food.
Yeah.
So it's the next stage. But when you get to the point that anything and everything, and I'm sure somewhere in the utopian world of Roddenberry's vision, there was the tumultuous times, much like the early Matrix, where they made it a utopia and people resisted, and then they eventually had to go to war and make things grittier, to make it easier. So at some point there was here's everything, and people didn't accept it. And then the balance was struck.
Right.
So like everything Starfleet, you want for nothing, for sure. But there's parts of the world where you can still go to a restaurant and have a meal cooked for you for real from actual food that didn't come out of nothingness. Somebody actually grew plants. Because then why if we have replicators, but Picard's family still owns a winery growing real grapes.
Right.
So there's real work that is still put into things.
And I'll tell you something about the Star Trek universe. There's an episode in TNG that's always bothered me.
Sure.
Is that it's very clear. They make it very clear in any one that has replicators that the alcohol, that the synthahol is not as good as the real thing.
Exactly. Right? That's why whenever they get bottles of stuff, it's stronger.
Except in the episode where they come across the old capsule that's got a bunch of frozen people in it from our century.
Yeah.
And that guy comes out, and the first thing he does is ask for a whiskey.
Yeah.
So they replicate him a whiskey. And he drinks it, and he says, that is the best whiskey I've ever tasted. And I was like, who's on continuity? That guy is lying. That is not the best whiskey he's ever tasted because everybody says it's not as good as the real thing.
But was he
what the heck, Star Trek?
Was he still drunk when he had it?
No, he
still
was
drunk from being unfrozen.
He was just unfrozen. Maybe he got frozen drunk. Things do taste better after you've had a few.
Yeah, well, because they don't taste like anything.
Yeah,
they taste like everything. That's the problem when you've had too many.
But if it takes us down a path where we're all just kind of these hybridized whatever, and we're altering our DNAs so that this works better and that works better, and we're trying to eliminate cancers and blah blah. Like, at what point are we no longer really human? And then, if that becomes problematic, or if AI starts to take over because of the singularity or whatever the case,
which is inevitable,
and then someone comes in kind of as the savior of like, well, I have the solution to all this. Maybe even that is an AI entity.
It would have to be, because the only thing that's going to be good enough to take out a bad AI is a good AI.
Well,
because why else are we have so many companies creating separate, like Musk just threw out his Grok or whatever he calls it, because he's tired of all the other ones that were created. It's like he went to a summit on AI and then came back and announced his own AI.
Right.
I was just like, I think you missed the point, Elon. The idea is you're supposed to be stopping it, not making your own.
Right.
But it's like, okay, so you've got all these other, you've got the what do they call it? Predictive language models.
Yeah.
That's not real AI.
No.
Not in the same way. But then you've got the things that are creating art. That's getting there.
It's getting there.
Yeah, it's getting there. But then you've got if you combine those things, and neither are really thinking for themselves, they're just taking what's there, jumbling it back together, and polishing the turd, but they're getting so much faster at polishing.
Right.
To the point that you're not even going to know you're being handed a turd.
True.
And that's the problem. I mean, like, now the voice AI thing is getting scarier because those ads are constantly popping up.
Yeah.
People that sound like things, they're always selling crap. You know, the newest one with Oprah and The Rock, I thought was hilarious. I was like, is anyone falling for that? That doesn't even really sound like it. But
I do enjoy the Snoop Dogg reads the Bible one.
Those are great. Oh, I listened to, oh my God. It's Joe Biden singing Johnny Cash's version of Hurt. And it's fantastic. And it sounds...
I'll have to go listen to it.
I will send it to you.
I started listening to like some of the AI. Like, it was really interesting to be like, okay, Kurt Cobain sings Foo Fighters or whatever, and none of it's there.
No,
but it was still interesting to listen to.
Yeah,
I'm sure it'll be there, and give it 5 years.
Don't even give it 5 years. Yeah. Give it less than 2.
Well, especially if they
especially
really
now
start perfecting the AI, then the AI will just fix itself.
Well, now it's the idea that it's just getting faster and faster because it's exponential learning.
Right.
And with more and more people doing it for fun, which means, at least in a way, to go there, AI would probably be like the ultimate kind of sin.
Right.
Everyone joins in. It's so much fun. Look at how great it is.
Well, and
it's
if it turns into Ready Player One, then you get into the moral dilemma of like, well, okay, how do you define relationship?
We're already there. That's a metaverse.
Yeah, well, true. And I think, to me, like, what I learned coming out of COVID and where everybody's doing Zoom calls and whatever is like, if you're not like, well, for instance, you gave me the option to do this from home.
Yeah.
You were like, hey, we can do this remotely for convenience. And I'm like, nah, man, I want to come over to your house.
Yeah. And I have no problem with that. It was just, if you couldn't.
Yeah. But it's because I value the face-to-face.
Oh, I do too.
Relationship. Can we do it the other way? Yeah. But to me, the better option is to be here. Right. And so, like,
until it came to the setup.
Yeah. except for the setup. Like, that took a while. But yeah, it's when you get into that kind of Ready Player One idea where we're all just putting on headsets or
Full body
or
suits
directly
or-
jacking into our brains or however, you know, if they can ever perfect that technology.
They're
Okay,
getting
well
there.
then it feels real, it looks real, it smells real.
What's reality?
You know, what's reality even then? And and then how would you know that the people you're interacting with, like, oh, I met this new guy, you know,
I mean-
in the metaverse doing
Yeah.
what? How do you know that's a new guy? How do you know that's not some NPC that's really good at seeming like they're a real guy from Toledo?
Have you seen
know?
this? There was a website that did this. That actually did this experiment.
Mm-hmm.
You would be randomly paired with another person to chat.
Mm-hmm.
That person is either a real person or just a language model.
Oh yeah.
And they said, guess based on your conversation which one it was. Most people got it wrong.
Yeah.
They couldn't tell which one it was. And that was just text.
Yeah.
Now that we're getting better on the voice and actually getting better on the video stuff, like the fact that we're literally feeding it everything it needs.
And how will anybody know? Like, so now everything done for education is moving to being able to do it online.
And I hate it.
So if I can have an avatar of me sitting there,
They're doing it.
looking like me, sounding like me, whatever. Okay, so I just earned a college degree by flipping a switch.
Yeah.
While I went and played Halo,
Yeah.
and come back, 3.5 years later, and I've got my bachelor's in whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go show that. Like, education system is really going to become meaningless.
As opposed to what
If
it
it's
is
not
now.
already.
It already is. But you looked at it from that end. But the opposite end is true. They actually already have AI teachers. Mm-hmm. And some schools have implemented this for whenever, say, they have to shut down again.
Somebody's at your door.
That's weird.
Somebody ordered pizza.
No, nobody ordered pizza.
Amazon delivery.
Oh, I did have an Amazon delivery.
See?
Fair point. But that also goes into the dehumanization. Go a step back.
Yeah.
On technology, texting.
I hated texting when it came out.
But it's annoying as hell when someone calls you.
Yeah.
Just
now it
text
is.
me.
Right.
We've reduced so we've actually gone backwards. So when you used to get text messages or instant messages, you would hope that was a real person on the other
Right.
side. I did a lot of online dating that way in the AOL Instant Messenger days. You know?
Right.
So my first girlfriends were all online. It wasn't until I talked to them on the phone to even remotely get that it's a person.
Right.
But now we've got to the point we prefer non-human contact, even to spare each other our own voices. And then we turn around and listen to digital voices on the radio.
Right.
Or on podcasts. But we won't answer the phone for our best friends and or family.
Right.
And now we got to a point where, like you said, you're unplugged into the metaverse via your Neuralink, and you'll be talking to someone who looks like your best friend, but you don't know.
Yeah, you don't know.
You have no idea. And actually, I don't know if you saw this or not. It was a virtual conversation between Lex Fridman and Zuckerberg, and they did it with AI digital models, and it looked like they were sitting in the same room
Right.
conversing, and it wasn't. It was just straight up in the metaverse. It was nuts. And it's like, okay, this is crazy. Have you heard the AI Joe Rogan experience?
No.
So it's literally a full-on AI predictive model with voice model that replicates full podcasts of the Joe Rogan experience.
And probably does it really well.
It does. It's kind of scary. I listened to a couple of them. I'm like, this is weird because it just sounds like. I mean, when you have
Because it's got all this. It's got hundreds and hundreds or thousands of hours to.
literally thousands of hours of talking.
Yeah, and I think so. It's interesting because we talk about. So what happens when we get to that point and we're jacked into the metaverse or whatever, and like we don't know if this is a computer. And I think that there are probably way more people than we would like to admit that would say I don't care.
Yeah.
Because at that point, like, what does it matter? And it reminds me of like Cypher in the Matrix movies.
Yep.
Like, I know this isn't real. I taste this and the juice is running down my throat and whatever, and I know it's not real.
Yep.
But I don't care. Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, as a man of faith, and my whole thing with God is that we're made for relationships.
Yeah.
So we are barreling towards, at comet speed towards this time where essentially what a lot of people are going to say is, I do not care about genuine relationships. I do
Yeah.
not value human relationships because as long as it suits me, I'm happy, which goes back to why I think that scene is so impactful to me from Doctor Strange of saying,
Yeah.
okay, but it's not about you. It's not about you. And the world is a lesser place. If you remove yourself, I would say to that person, and I actually have had that conversation with somebody before who was just like, oh yeah, well, I don't care because what would it matter? Like, I'll be happy. I would say to that person, like, okay, but you take yourself out of it and the world is a lesser place for it because there is something in, like, you were created for a reason. And there's something in you that's valuable. And like, it's always hard for people to wrap their minds around. Everybody goes to the Hitler argument like, okay, but was Hitler a valuable human being? Yeah, he was. He was a valuable human being who made terrible decisions over and over and over and over and just completely threw away the gift of life that God gave him. Yeah. He could have been, you know, with the brain that he had, he could have been like a world leader that brought peace and prosperity to a lot of people, but
Like the Time magazine cover kind of promised.
but he chose not to.
No.
You know, he made really, really bad choices,
Or he was influenced.
And so it's really hard for people to be like, well, yeah, why did God let people like Hitler exist? Well, because God valued Hitler
God
in the same way that he values you, in the same way that he valued Mother Teresa.
Yeah.
And like that's that's hard for us to wrap our minds around.
Yeah. But going back into the biblical argument, it's like God stepped out of it.
Why would he interfere?
Yeah, it's like God took on a non-interference clause.
Yeah.
He said, like, we're not there yet. And he's like, what do you mean? Well, when this red light goes off, that's when I come in.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't come in because you said, hey, I need help with this thing today.
And wouldn't it make sense, and again, this is theory, but wouldn't it make sense if the red light that says I'm stepping back in is literally at the point where there's really nothing human left?
I agree with that. I like that idea. Oh, and thank you for coming back around to that because you brought back the thought that I had a long time ago, and I was having a discussion with a coworker about that, and we were talking about how biblical lifespans were ridiculous. Mm-hmm. You know, people literally were living thousands of years.
Yeah,
thousands of years.
996.
Well, there was a lot of the Old Testament. I could have sworn there were people who were living like 1200. Nope. I could have sworn
996.
Okay. Maybe I'm wrong. Either way,
now I have to look it up because I feel like
I could have sworn like way back when they were talking about the ages of, because I had a Bible that literally broke down the ages of all the people.
The oldest living human. Sorry, I was wrong. I knew I was wrong. 969. I had it at 996.
Okay. Well, I could have sworn. Either way, the point is absurd.
Yeah.
Right. But
obviously, like, nobody is living that long today,
because that would be strange.
Right.
But the way I looked at it was, I was like, what if it's that there's only so much life force to go around, and the more people we have, because if people were living hundreds upon hundreds of years when there was literally 100 of us, and then now that there's 8 billion of us, we force ourselves to live to 90 by all means necessary. But if we didn't, odds are most of us would probably be dying sometime in our 40s.
Yeah,
from
50s
all the
and
junk.
40s and 50s, and maybe like 60s would be really old.
Yeah, 60s would be the old people. We'd be,
I agree.
What was the series where they used to stick people out once they hit like 30-something? The red light went off in their hand and they sent them out into the desert.
I don't know. My wife knows because...
Is it The Running Man or something like that? It was one of those.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, it was one of those where basically
my wife used to watch that one all the time when she was a kid.
Yeah, and then it was in a book and all that other kind of stuff. There's so many of those things, Brave New World, all those things that talk about all these horrible things that we're doing and have accurately somewhat predicted. But the idea that, like, okay, so we have 8 billion people on this planet, and of course we're not all equal across this planet. Some of us live to be 100. Some people still die at like 40 because they have no access to whatever.
Right.
But what if that's nature?
Yeah.
And everything we're doing to alternately expand our life force by fake organs,
right?
Arm transplants. I mean, medical science is great, but what if it's the wrong way?
Right.
Because we're only supposed to be so much. As weird as that sounds.
But it feels inevitable.
It does.
You know, it feels absolutely inevitable. It's like I said earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that if I could recreate a dinosaur, I would.
Yeah.
I know that I would. I've seen the Jurassic Park movies, and I would still freaking do it in a
Because
heartbeat.
you've been warned on what not to do. But
Yeah,
you'll find all new mistakes.
Yeah, I
to
mean,
make.
I probably wouldn't like try and take one over to freaking Los Angeles, but
Actually, I just realized I quoted Lost World without meaning it. It's like, no, you're making a whole new set of bad mistakes.
yes, but so it also seems inevitable that we're going to pursue immortality,
Of course.
and through doing that, like the only way we can do that at this point is technology and stuff like that. So
that was the other thing that you brought up earlier that I wanted to bring up about the fruit of the tree. That doesn't negate. I always said the Bible doesn't negate science and vice versa, because most people say science, religion. No, they literally there's too much crossover.
I agree.
To ignore. What if Adam and Eve were human, and the stoned ape theory is true?
what's the stoned ape theory? I haven't heard
That basically what triggered the human brain to evolve as it did was literally our more simian ancestors eating mushrooms and psilocybin. Basically, you've never heard stoned ape theory?
No,
huge on Rogan. They're looking at it. They're like, yeah, because we know that basically in these areas where everything happened, these mushrooms grew. So psilocybin is natural,
Right.
and it stimulates your brains in a way it doesn't normally do. But they see what happens when modern day apes ingest such things, and we see activity in their brains that's not normal.
Right.
And you start seeing development. That's why certain apes in certain areas have evolved faster, even in today's standards, compared to other areas, because maybe they have a different thing that they can get a hold of. So what if the stoned ape theory is closer to reality and biblical reality? So we know Eve ate of something that expanded her mind and changed life forever. And we have this idea that monkeys, or apes, realistically, ate of things that they didn't normally eat, and it expanded their brains to become something else.
Yeah.
So the two things are not mutually exclusive, but it's how it's framed. Because we always see Adam and Eve as us,
Right.
modern day humans.
Sure.
It's like it's nothing that ever said that they were. It's just like, because evolution is obvious. We know evolution is a thing. But nothing ever said that Adam and Eve were perfect, normal humans as we know them to be.
I don't think it's that obvious. I think that microevolution is very obvious.
Yeah.
And I think no one has proven macroevolution yet.
I think macroevolution is hard because we've only ever seen microevolution.
Right. And so it's
except in
hard
humans.
it's hard to know.
Except in modern day humans. Cancer is a macroevolution of humanity.
I haven't heard that.
Well, think of it that way. Look, it's not a good evolution, but it's our shit that is bringing it amongst us. Like, obviously, gene pool, diluted, all these other horrible things that we do. But most of our cancers are directly coming from things we created and put into the environment.
Right.
Exhaust, causing lung cancer.
Right.
Cigarettes, we decided to do that to ourselves. Asbestos, we're the ones who dug that out of the ground and decided to line everything with it. All these other things. Radiation, we created the things that irradiate us to cause cancer in our brains.
Yeah.
So, like, we've forced an evolution upon ourselves.
Right. But then what would have caused such kinds of evolution prior to us jacking up the entire environment?
Only natural causes.
Right.
So evolution was caused by things that happened around you. Earthquakes changed the landscape. You now have to learn how to climb trees to get food because the earthquake eliminated your food source.
Right.
So now you get better at climbing trees over the next thousands of years.
Yeah.
Millions of years, however long it takes. And we know that, okay, for instance, another subhumanoid species that was discovered not that long ago, we have now determined that they had some form of society that they never understood because they only saw them where they lived, but they never saw where they died. And they accidentally found a cave where they actually uncovered a burial site. These were not anything that would be considered a regular human. They're not even directly on our line of evolution, but they had burial sites.
Yeah.
They had fire. They used fire to light the caves
Yeah.
to get to their burial site.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you saw it on Netflix.
Yeah.
That happened because of environmental situations.
Right.
And that's the only thing that could be there. It's like, I mean, maybe they did something on their own. Maybe they ate certain foods. You know, like I said, you know, we evolved differently, but we evolved together at the same time.
Right.
Because if humanity supposedly came from, you know, Africa all at once, then almost all life would have come from one central point and spread outward. But birds and other species have coevolution thousands of miles apart, completely in different environments.
Right.
So there's also the idea that there's an energy field that connects us, you know, apes using tools. That was simultaneous across the world.
Yeah.
There's no way. There's nothing else
Well,
to
there's so
connect
many
them.
things that are completely unexplainable about,
Yeah.
you know, the pyramids being
Those are almost
being where
explainable.
they are, how they're built, completely unrelated cultures.
Yes.
And
there's pyramids.
and aligned in a way that's like very clearly the same, and it makes you think, okay,
Well, that's the environment. That's the stars. Because there's so many. Well, it's like Stonehenge. Okay, it lines up to the celestial calendar, technically speaking. Because the only thing they have to look at back then, stars.
Right.
So they start coming up with the ideas around said stars, and then they start noticing, okay, the Earth is doing something. It's getting colder outside, and the stars have moved compared to yesterday.
right,
Okay, let's track this and see what happens. Why the pyramids were built? Who actually knows? Because apparently those are older than we thought. And if you
Right.
listen to Graham, I forgot his last name, but he's always on Rogan talking about this stuff. Because he's talking about
I'll confession, I've never listened to it.
and I think you told me that before, but hold on.
Not because I don't have anything
No,
against
Graham
them. Like, I
Hancock.
literally just
So-
have never watched.
So
or
Graham
listened.
Hancock was one who did Ancient Apocalypse.
Okay.
If you watch that, so that's the one that talks about how there are civilizations older than current archaeologists will admit existed. Upwards of 20,000 years ago, we have evidence of civilization, and they've just found within the Great Pyramid of Giza another chamber that was previously completely unknown. So there's like the Grand Chamber or whatever that's really low. They just found another one above it. They're like, how the heck was this ever designed, and why did it take us this long to find it?
Right.
It's only modern scientific stuff that's allowing us to find
Right.
that. And Graham is currently, because I was just listening to him, they're surveying the Amazon. Because no one's ever gone, you can't go into the Amazon to see stuff other than when you go in to tear all the trees down and
Right.
put in more cows. So they're using LiDAR and other things like that, and they're finding man-made stuff in the Amazon.
Yeah.
That we have never known to exist. And it's like, this is so old. It's like, this predates stuff we have no
Right.
concept of.
Yeah.
But humans could have been the only ones who did it.
Right.
Because we're the only ones who make anything geometric shaped outside of like maybe birds and
Right.
bees. Like birds and the bees make all the other geometric shapes somehow. It's
Yeah.
like we came up with the honeycomb pattern because we saw bees do
Right.
it. It's like,
Yeah, we learned it from nature.
yeah, we learned it from nature. So the idea is that evolution could only become from nature before us. Because we're the only ones who do anything outside of our actual environment. We created air conditioning because it's hot.
Right.
But we use a semi-toxic thing to keep ourselves cool in the winter.
Right.
And we burn stuff to make electricity to make it cooler inside. So we make fire somewhere else so that we can be cold indoors.
Right.
That's a weird concept. But that's us evolving faster via technology. Other things evolve on a cellular level over God knows how long. No pun intended. We evolve everything around us because we're uncomfortable
Right.
today. You know, and we're the only species that do that
That we know of.
so far. Well, on Earth, we're the only species that does that. Other ones just move when it gets cold. We said, we
Yes.
like it here. We're going to make it warm inside. Or, oh, hey, it's too sunny outside. How do I build a roof instead of just going to find a tree to hang out under because it's hot today?
Yeah.
You know? So we forced our own macroevolution, and cancer is part of that.
Yeah.
Our eyes are getting weaker because of these.
Right.
Our necks are getting weaker because of these. Literally, within generations of owning these devices, our children's necks will actually eventually develop to be weaker, to look down instead of forward. We don't have to hunt and gather anymore. And now we're developing our car to drive themselves, which means we don't even have to look forward for the primary reason we do right now.
Right.
We look down to focus on things.
I mean, it'd be interesting to see like if that plays out, because I know that's the
I don't
theory.
want to live that long.
No, but that's the point, though. We won't
Yeah.
live that long.
We shouldn't.
We won't live that long, and by the time that anything like that were to play out, should it play out, will anybody remember that we were saying that it was going to happen? Because I remember when I was...
No, because we'll delete that because it was offensive.
When I was in 3rd grade, my history teacher told me that our pinky toes were going away and that our big toes were getting bigger, that our heads were getting bigger, and that... what was the other thing that he said? But he was saying that, like, yeah, this is all tracked, and I'm like, okay, 3rd grade seems like eons ago to me. Mm-hmm. But in reality, if what he was saying was true, and I don't remember why he was saying it, but he was saying it in very much the same way you're saying what you're, well, this is, we're tracking it and this is what's happening. Essentially, if I remember correctly, he was saying that we're turning into the gray aliens, like that essentially we're becoming the gray aliens.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, but if that's true, like it's my grandchildren won't know it. My great-grandchildren won't know it. My great-great-great-grandchildren won't know it because of the amount of time that it would take.
Yeah.
But what's interesting to me is like that none of it really genuinely, I know that, like, and I'm, of course, me being me, I'm taking everything back to scripture, but there are a lot of people that's like, oh, you have to take Genesis literally or the rest of the Bible, or you can't take any of the Bible literally. And then there's other people that are like, well, if you understood anything about Hebrew culture, then you understand the value of allegory and you're able to blah, blah, blah. And we don't really have that in our English speaking culture. And blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, at the end of the day, that none of that matters to me because it is not relevant to, like, I don't feel like I'm going to get to the other side at the end of my life and God be like, you got the theory of evolution wrong. You're out,
It's like a test.
Yeah, you failed that one. I don't think that's really what he cares about, and I think everything like points to that in scripture. But it is fun to theorize about like how all this stuff happened, because to me what makes more sense than macroevolution is that we were created the way that we are. And that when sin entered the world, things started degrading. Like, that makes sense to me. I think, like, you can prove that the human genome is degrading.
Yeah, of course. You 100% can.
Yeah, and so...
For some people, unlike your wife. Apparently,
right.
She's the ultimate evolution.
Yes, she is. She is. She's basically Wonder Woman. But to me, it's interesting, like, and things like the pyramids and stuff that, to this day, with our modern technology,
we can't
explain it. We have no idea how they were built. We have no idea how they cut stones with such precision. We have no idea
how we moved them so far.
And like, none of that stuff. And I'm like, well, all of it makes sense. And this is the part that, like, I struggle with as a modern Christian pastor, because I know that some Christians get super miffed when I'm like, hey, look, if you put Enoch back in the canon, a lot of stuff makes sense that didn't make sense before. And they get really mad because they're like, well, it's not canon, and so if you believe it, you're a heretic. And I'm like, okay, so Jesus's brother was a heretic because he definitely believed it, or he wouldn't have referenced it, in the scriptures and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I mean, it's super interesting to me to think, like, if we were all created and if angels are not these ethereal, untouchable creatures that essentially the medieval times gave us that picture of
the cherubs,
the cherubs and the great winged creatures and whatever.
Yeah,
and
because the Bible describes angels as being insanely.
It does,
creepy.
And those
the big ones, anyways.
I would also argue that could be prophetic allegory. Well, I don't know that angels really look like wheels with 1,000 eyes and 14, and 6 wings and whatever. And crazy. Because
if you look at some of the other depictions of angels from other cultures, it's it's similar but different descriptions.
Right.
So if for some reason independent cultures have come up with this idea of angels, in whatever means they come up with it, and the descriptions are close enough to go, do your angels sound like our angels?
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah.
It's like, your demons sound similar to my demons.
And it would make
weird.
It would make total sense that, all of this stuff happened so long ago and in different cultural contexts that everybody's going to take what actually happened, like the story of the flood, that everybody's like, oh, no, it was the ancient Sumerians, the Christians stole it. Well, they didn't steal it. they're telling the same
They're the
story
same
from a
people.
different perspective.
Yeah.
You know, because they're a different culture. In the same way that you and I won't tell our wives later how this podcast went in the same way. You're going to tell Jennifer it went a certain way, and I'm going to tell my wife it went another. Gosh dang it!
Every time.
Every time. Why do I always want to call her Jennifer? She kind of looks more like a Jennifer to me.
She's been told she worked with a Jennifer, and people often called them opposite names.
Plus, I only met her once, so I'll continue to forgive myself until I've met her.
And by the way, she's off the rail with nerves about you being here because she always thinks the house is so filthy.
Oh yeah, tell her I was absolutely disgusted when I walked in.
I will, but it's mostly because I was at the door.
But anyways, Jessica, and I'll tell
statement.
my wife something different, and like that makes sense, right? Because we're different people in
'cause-
different contexts.
well,
like
one thing
obviously, different cultures are gonna take the same story, and it's gonna sound different. It's all a game of telephone.
It is because somebody wrote it down at bare minimum like 5,000 years ago. At bare minimum, bare minimum. Well, even if we allow for the Graham Hancock to be correct, and we'll go 15,000.
Right.
If we go all the way back to the flood, it's supposedly 20 to 15,000 years ago. Somehow we're off by 5,000. But then again, we were off by 10,000. So it is what it is. Assuming it was that long ago, if we go specifically by what happened in the Bible, then only a handful of people survived. But what if it wasn't just that small handful? It was God's chosen few, correct. But what if there's literally whole other cities that survived that they didn't know about?
Right.
I mean, we're discovering all this stuff, literal giant temples buried in a mountain that other stuff has been built upon.
Right.
That is 16,000 years old. And you go, oh, okay, let's go back a little bit. Because what we wrote down before doesn't acknowledge that.
Right.
So if there's a lack of knowledge, that means either someone eliminated that knowledge or knowledge, their histories are separate. And that's entirely possible. Because things happened in Europe at the same time things were happening here, and never the twain shall meet.
Right.
Until we came over here with some blankets, and then things went the way they did. It's like history happens in different places. People happen elsewhere. We know that from actual history. But if people existed further back in further places in the world than we ever expected, like actual people, real civilizations that built things, existed older than anything we know and understand, then the Bible can't be as wrong as people think it is, especially when you throw in the flood.
Right.
But then you also can't, if you think of that as, well, everything was wiped out except for the ones who managed to survive by getting to high ground or by having boats.
Or underground.
Possible
As well.
But you would have to way to seal it.
Yeah.
But if that eliminates also Atlantis, or the idea of Atlantis.
No, I totally think Atlantis was real.
Oh, of course. There's too much evidence to show that it wasn't.
Yeah.
There's too much, but we can't find it because it was wiped out by either the comets from the Younger Dryas period and all those things. If you really dig into that stuff. By the way, Sean is losing his mind that we're talking about this. My buddy Sean, who started this podcast, because he and I talk about this stuff, and he's very much into all of it, especially the Graham Hancock theories and all this stuff, because he is like panned hard by modern day archaeologists.
Oh, yeah.
Because he believes differently to them. It's a religion. And it's also, so you think the argument between Christianity and science is a problem? No, science against science. Because the dogma that says that humanity is roughly only 5,000 years old in a modern sense, and this stuff can only be in this area. It's like the Sphinx is older than the pyramids, according to most science.
Yeah, that's what.
And it's older than most of the religions, quote unquote, that we base around it.
Right.
So what was it built for? Who put it there? And what was there that we don't know about?
Right.
So,
Which, I would say that all those answers are in the Book of Enoch.
Maybe.
I think that they are.
I
really think that they are,
arguing
because
against
these guys, so in the Book of Enoch they're called the Watchers, but they're angels, and the Watchers came down, and their whole point of doing what they did was to give their offspring dominion. Now these Nephilim would have been giants, now there's an argument, and I think it's a very, very well founded argument. I personally believe it that in Scripture there's a term that's used, men of renown, and the men of renown, I believe, were these giants.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody knew who they were. They would have seen them, and I believe that a lot of them ruled. And you go back and you look at the hieroglyphs that they find in the temples, and you see normal sized people standing next to giants.
Giant people.
And the giants were clearly the ones that were being worshipped. They were the ones that were ruling and whatever. So like, that all makes total sense to me. And then as far, and then here comes like James theory, right? Like, well, all of this is really James theory. I mean, obviously I'm not the only person who believes this, but
This is a new channel, James Theory.
yeah, James theory, a James theory.
Shout out to Matt Pat.
Is that the Greek gods, the Roman gods, that Zeus, that
I didn't realize the wife has been trying to call me.
Odin, that all of these. Oh, she's trying to call you right now.
She's been trying to call me.
She's been trying to call. You're in trouble now.
I guess. I just texted her back.
No.
She's at work, though. I'll let her call me back.
Okay.
Yeah, well, one thing is she's calling me from the work number, which I probably would have ignored because I'm an ass. Weird. I wonder what's up. Oh, well, she'll call me back. Wait a minute. How far back does she... Okay, that's from the other day. I was like, wow, she didn't call me at like 12:30. She only called like 15 minutes ago.
Oh.
But because my phone is on silent and I can't hear it buzzing.
Yeah, my wife keeps texting me. But
Yeah, so you have the little thingy letting you know that.
yeah, it buzzes on my watch so I can see.
Oh, she'll reply if she can. Because normally she would have gone on lunch, but she would have called from her own number, not from the work number. That's weird. I mean, we're already at over 3 hours, but this is a good conversation. Yeah. Sorry, I just now look. Because normally I have my phone sitting out in front of me, and I have it over here up to the side. Oh, speaking of which, I'm going to keep it muted just in case.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry, our cat might be missing.
Which one?
The white one that we just bought that was ridiculously expensive.
Oh, no.
Because my wife said, oh, okay, never mind. He's with my daughter. He's fine. Because like I said, we have contractors in our house installing an air conditioning unit, and I locked the cat in our room, and then my wife texted me and said, hey, did you lock the cat up before you left? And I was like, yes. She's like, oh, okay, whoof. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then she texted me again, and she's like, because when I got home, the front door was open and our door was open, so it's good that you locked him up. I'm like, I locked him in our room. If our door is open, that's where I locked him.
So the cat,
but anyway, it's okay.
One of the kids got it. Good.
His name is Khonshu, by the way.
Yes, Khonshu. Since we're talking about ancient gods.
Yes.
Well, there's nothing that also.
Gods. But the idea that these so Enoch walks with these angels and the Watchers in exchange for the Watchers come and they make a deal with man, and that's important because it was mandated and commanded by God that mankind was supposed to be the ones that inherit the earth, and that mankind was the one who was supposed to be, basically the caretakers of the earth. And so that deal can't be broken. Like, that was set by the Creator. Like, you can't, like, there's nothing you can do about it. And man cannot change that was the whole deal that was made. But what he can do is he can hand it over to someone.
You can sign a contract over.
They're saying, okay, we are giving this responsibility to you now. And it's interesting too, because then later on in Scripture, in actual Scripture, like canonized Scripture, when Jesus is with Satan, and Satan is saying, I will give you all these kingdoms, and everybody's like, oh, well, see, he didn't have the kingdoms to give. They weren't his. Yes, they were.
Yeah.
And the reason that they were is because man had abdicated his authority over to evil. And I believe, and now that part I think it's in Scripture, right? But how did he do it? That part is in Enoch, but it's not in the Bible, the canonized Protestant Bible. So they made a deal with mankind that if they would give them their daughters, they would give them valuable information. Okay. So they taught weaponry, and they taught fire, and they taught medicines, and they taught herbs, and they taught building and construction and blah, blah, blah. And I think that's when all that stuff happened. I think that's when all the pyramids got built and everything else, is that you had these essentially
aliens.
Essentially aliens. Yeah. I mean, what is an angel if not an alien?
Higher beings of some sort.
What is an angel if not an alien? Angels were not created on Earth or for Earth.
Yeah.
Therefore, if you see an angel, you're seeing an alien. So So these quote unquote ancient aliens,
Yeah.
which were really, in my opinion, were not aliens in the way that we necessarily think of them. Modern use of the term, I think they were angels.
Yeah.
And they give man all this knowledge, and that's where all this stuff comes from that we don't understand how that happened. Then the flood happens, and almost all of that stuff gets erased.
Because it should be.
Because it should be erased, and because the Nephilim were still interbreeding with the women of Earth.
Yeah.
And degrading the human genome even further. So when everybody's like, well, how could God murder all the blah, blah, blah? Well, because we weren't going to be human anymore. We weren't going to be us anymore. And, it's an unfortunate way to have to do it. But how do you cut off, if I have cancer in my leg and it's going to spread to the rest of my whole body until eventually all of me's cancer and I'm going to die, I'm going to tell the doctor, cut my leg off. Period. Like, that's what I'm going to, everybody would. So, unless they just didn't want to be alive. So I just kind of think that's the answer to that age-old question. That's probably the one I get asked the most as a pastor is like, well, why would you serve a God that would murder all these poor innocent women and children? I'm like, why would I cut off my leg?
So
if I had cancer in it and it's going to spread to the rest of my body, I would totally do it.
Let me tie into that with this idea that, and it goes into the stoned ape theory too. So if you listen to the rantings of Alex Jones, not the directly political
Gay
ones.
frogs.
The gay frogs is great, also proven true, mostly. But the other idea that what the elites of the world are technically trying to do is embrace immortality,
right?
By trying to get themselves evolved to a point that they can move on to whatever the next ultimate reality is, or downloading their soul or their mind into whatever. But the way they get there to gain this information, much like you were just describing with what's happened in the book of Enoch, is making deals, making sacrifices to access another realm of knowledge from whatever these quote-unquote aliens are. And if those aliens are, at this point, the Nephilim, as you said, the spirits that are still around to roam the earth eternally, the way they do that is through drugs. Specifically like psilocybin, DMT, things like that, which enhance human perception. Which, if you go all the way back to said stoned ape theory, possibly also beginning this in the first place, and also being given knowledge in exchange for a deal,
right,
with an angel,
right.
So basically, those angels later in Genesis, or in Enoch technically, made the same deal that Lucifer did, but with a greater group of people.
Right.
Hey, give me this thing and I'll give you all this knowledge. Right. You can do all this other same stuff. And we're making the same deal today. Possibly not with the same angels, but some type of entity, maybe even their children, which, would have given us all these advancements and everything else like that. And in the same pursuit of greed and knowledge and power, they're doing the same things.
Right.
And then, as you pointed out earlier, the idea of diluting humanity to the point of
to where we're not human,
non-acceptance to God.
Yeah, we're no longer us, and so he's just like, well, I didn't create this. This is not what I created.
This is far, and we already know that he did, and he said he wouldn't ever flood the earth again, but the next go round is going to be worse.
Right.
And you got to get to that point.
And it's interesting because you making the moral argument about God. And of course, I believe he's completely sovereign and he can do whatever he wants, and whatever he decides to do is the right thing to do. I believe that, and I know that's hard for a lot of people to accept, but it's what I believe. But, the way that I kind of look at it that can help my brain wrap around it, okay, so we get AI to a point, and then boom, the singularity, and maybe that works great for the first couple of years. Now we have an entity that's smarter than us, that's helping us, and we're working our way towards the utopia until such day that the AI is like, you know what? Either I don't need these humans anymore, or they're a danger to themselves, or whatever nightmare scenario, that you can concoct that's been done 1,000 times in sci-fi.
Sure.
And that happens. Well, what if we, as the creators of that AI, have the ability to just go switch it off and go, okay, done with this, click.
Well,
would we?
Yeah, we would.
Okay, but the AI is sentient at that point. It's a living thing. It's a blah, blah. But would we still? Heck yeah, we would. we'd go and flip that switch in a heartbeat. Almost anybody would.
Let's go back to
if
Star
you're
Trek.
not like a psychopath or something.
Go back to Star Trek, Measure of a Man.
Yeah, exactly. And so if we get to that point where God's like, okay, well, this is not what I created anymore.
Yeah.
Like this is not what it was meant to be. It's not about, and I have the power to stop it. And at this point, I'm not harming any of my creation because it's not what I created.
Yeah.
Boom, I'm done with it. And here comes the
if he
apocalypse.
saves-
like that
saves
makes
what he
so much more
creates.
sense to me
Yeah.
than just some random. Because why would God, is going back to what I said earlier about, to me, why your AI idea about God didn't work is because of the scripture that says he's the same yesterday, today, and forever.
Yeah.
So if he was non-interference then why at some point in what a lot of my colleagues believe is the near future, which I've never believed,
Yeah.
I do not believe that Christ will return in my lifetime. I've never believed it. I still don't believe it. Now,
okay.
I could be wrong because things could advance really rapidly, as you're saying. So, anyways,
Well, the end of days.
it doesn't matter.
Nigh.
It doesn't matter because the Bible says no man knows the day or the hour. But my point is, like, why would he all of a sudden start interfering? Yeah, he never interfered in the past, and now he's, as far as like to wipe things out, to wipe the slate absolutely clean, because he didn't wipe it absolutely clean in the flood because Noah was still there and all that stuff. So why would he do that unless there was nothing left to protect?
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that idea, and I also believe that Jesus wouldn't come back in our lifetime. But there is the idea, and this has been sort of fleshed out, that there are people trying to make it happen.
Oh,
So
that's been forever.
Yeah, but I mean, like, even actively currently with what's going on in Israel and Palestine, people have been trying to breed a red heifer.
Yeah.
To bring on that stage of the beliefs of this is the chunk of the apocalypse that we get to influence. So they've been trying to make it happen instead of waiting for divine intervention as you go.
Right.
So call that human hubris, which, we're really good at that part.
Yeah.
We're really good at being self-important to the point that we believe that we can now even determine when God is going to do the thing.
Yeah.
So basically, like,
But
instead of seeing it as an indefinite calendar, we see it as, well, they left behind all the details.
Right.
Let's just see what we can make happen.
See what we can make
We'll
happen.
just get after it. It's like, okay, so they look at it as a spell,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Well, I think a lot of people look at
here's-
God as like a magic. The whole thing is like magic, and I don't think any of it is.
If it's to be believed as literal, there would have to literally be magic involved.
Yeah.
But the idea that and I love that this is one thing that Supernatural does tie into. I love that it's turned into a giant Supernatural episode. That there's some magic that we can touch and we can imitate. But when it comes to the big stuff, you got to get to give.
Yeah.
Or same the other way around. Depending on how far you want to go. So much as time travel magic almost indefinitely needed soul power to do it. You had to sacrifice part of your soul to do something to that level. But the idea that there's a giant spell that we can make happen to where we can kick off the apocalypse is like, call it that is the ultimate religious zealotry that you want so badly for the world to end so that I guess you can go be with God. Not the mercy killing aspect of the idea. We're like, well, it's so bad, it needs to be wiped out.
Yeah.
Which is a horrible concept, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And that's not for us to decide, but that's what we like to do. We're like, we don't like that these people are like this.
Right.
We'll just make them disappear.
Yeah.
And if we're going to make all of them disappear, even better. Someone said that maybe there was a final thing there as it goes. In particular, like, anytime you get people who take religion to the point of let's make an apocalypse happen, maybe you've gone a little too far.
Yeah, and a severe misunderstanding of like your role in all
It's
of
like
this.
your role. Well, I mean, to be fair, nobody knows their role. To be fair, I don't have my buttons, or I would hit them right now, because I have the voice. I have the drops from Letterkenny. But like, I just that's when you've gone too far.
Yeah.
It's like you already went past the manipulating society into giving yourself all the power for things, using God as your basis.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean you. I'm talking about the crazy zealots. I'm waiting for that stage of James, though. Waiting for the gold robes, the giant throne, and all that.
Oh, well, give me a couple of years.
And AI.
It's a journey.
I'll give you AI as well.
It's a journey.
It's mid-journey.
Well, I'll push back. You said we can't really know our roles, but I
Well,
mean, to an extent,
our
like if
roles
you're talking
find
like
us.
specific nuances, like yeah, you might be right. But at the end of the day, because if I were my grandfather, God rest his soul, and I was listening to this podcast, I'd be so disappointed in me right now.
Yeah, I agree.
Because of my theories and whatever. But first of all, they're just theories. They're just ideas that I sit around and
James
think
theory.
of, and like it's just a James theory. And but second of all, none of it matters at the end of the day. And I know that like some people will push back against that so hard, and all they want to do is study the Book of Revelation or argue about literal versus analogous story of Genesis and all that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, this is what Paul said. He said, I determine, because Paul went from church to church and different cultures. He was dealing with some Jews. He was dealing with some Greeks. He's dealing with all the different people. And he said, at the end of the day, what I did is I determined that when I was among you to know just Jesus Christ and him crucified. And that's basically his way of saying, like, we can argue about this stuff all day long, about the semantics of this or the nuance of that or this blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what mattered was Jesus Christ and him crucified. And at the end of the day, macroevolution real, not real? I don't know. And I don't think that anybody can know, because you can be a Christian, you can believe in Jesus Christ and him crucified and also believe that Genesis was an analogy.
Yeah.
Or you can believe in Jesus Christ and him crucified and believe that everything that happened in Genesis was literal.
Yeah.
Neither one of those things affect the fact that historically we have far more proof that Jesus existed than we have that Plato existed. Nobody argues whether or not Plato existed, but a lot of people will argue that Jesus never existed or whatever. So at the end of the day, for me, my role is to do what Jesus told me to do. Because if God is real and if Jesus was the creator walking among his creation, and if he genuinely came to save us, then I have to take what he said seriously. And what he said was that I was supposed to do what he did. Well, what did he do? He came down, he found a bunch of guys, a bunch of nobodies, from different walks of life. Some of them hated each other. They had to have hated Matthew. Matthew was a tax collector. He was a traitor to his own people.
Yeah.
Right? And, today you're like, oh, yeah, we all hate our IRS agents. I'm not talking about an IRS agent. I'm talking about someone who was betraying his own race of people.
Yeah.
And Jesus chose him as one of his disciples.
Yeah.
And then Jesus chose some knucklehead fishermen and, and this and that, the other. But he walked with these guys.
Saul wasn't great.
He cared about them. He spent time with them. And he taught them basically the best way to live life.
That was macroevolution.
It was sort of
what he did to those men.
It was it was a spiritual macroevolution, and it took them a long time to figure it out.
Sometimes physical.
It took them a long time to figure it out.
Yeah.
3 years at least. And then even then, not everybody figured it out. Judas didn't figure it out.
Yeah,
right?
poor Judas.
And so
Judas had a role.
he had a role to play.
By the way, have you heard the idea of how vampires tie into Judas?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a whole movie about it.
I
Dracula
know.
2000, I think it
Dracula
was.
2000. Thank you. Thank you for knowing.
Yeah. So, yeah, but my role then is to do that. And so, like, when we have our men's group, that's my way of trying to find guys that are interested in walking in those kind of relationships and saying, okay, what did Jesus say about, like, how to live life in the best way that you can? And one of the things that, like, breaks my heart for the world is people thinking that the religion of Christianity is all about following these rules and regulations. Like, are there rules and regulations? Yeah, but in the same way that there's rules and regulations in a household. It kind of going back to the oven thing. Like, I'm gonna tell. I'll give you an example. When my son was 2 years old, less than 2 years old, I think he was 18 months old. I don't even know how he got up there. My friend had baked a pie, and we put it on top of the refrigerator, and we ate some of the pie, and then we put the leftovers, had a pie tin on it, and we put it on top of the fridge because it wasn't meant to be refrigerated. And so the next morning we come, and there's just pie everywhere. It's all over the side of the fridge and on the counter and on the floors. And then we go to my son's room, and there's pie smear all over his crib and his walls and his face. He had gotten up in the middle of the night, crawled out of his crib, went all the way downstairs, climbed up moved a chair, got up on a counter, got up on top of the fridge, got into this pie, and went to town. Was I pissed? Heck yeah, I was pissed. Did he get in horrible trouble for it? No, not at all, because he's 2.
Yeah.
He's 2. Like, is it a rule that you don't do that? Yeah. Do I expect him to understand that at 2? No. Now, he's 21 years old now. If he came and did that in my house now, I would throat punch him because he freaking knows better. Like, if he came to my house now, got into my fridge and smeared food all over my house, yeah, I would absolutely go bonkers about it because he knows better.
Yeah.
And in the same way, that's what Christianity is. Like, are there rules? Yeah. Do I expect everybody to come in and just like start living this perfect Christian life just because you said, oh, you know what? I think there's something to this Jesus thing. And yeah, I think I believe in that. And the experience that I grew up in was, okay, well, you said those words, and now that means you've got to start living this way. And if you don't, we're kicking you out. And that's the church that I grew up in. And unfortunately, I think that's still a lot of churches.
Yeah, I agree.
And so the part that people focus on, in my experience, the people who really have a problem with my faith is that they'll come in and say, well, you don't accept me, and therefore I don't accept you.
Yeah.
And I totally understand that argument. I 100% get where they're coming from.
And that is a really heavy, that particular mindset is a big thing right now, especially in the me. Like, I think we're so much more in the me generation that everyone is their own self-importance.
Right.
And if you don't acknowledge your self-importance to be better than yours,
right,
then they won't accept you because they feel you won't accept them.
Right.
To that degree.
And how would you find out, genuinely, how could you possibly know if someone is going to accept you for you unless you enter into a relationship with them?
Exactly.
And that's the whole point. That's exactly what Jesus did. He entered into relationships with these guys.
Yeah.
For 3 years, walked with them, ate with them, slept in the same tent as them or under the same stars and whatever. And this is who Jesus really was, and loved them where they were at. And, you know, when they started getting to know things to where they could know better, like, you know, he'd clap back at them if they said something knuckleheaded, but never in a way that was like,
well, because he was also a teacher.
He was. I mean,
on top of
like,
being...
why would you want to follow a God that's not teaching you anything? Why would you want to follow a God who's like, oh, you know what? Go ahead and touch the stove. Put your hands on the flame. See if I care. Yeah. Like, why would you want to serve that God? But that's not who that God is. And so I just think it's really cool to like live life in such a way where people understand that it's okay for you to be a supernatural fan, where if you want to take it literally, the Chuck character is absolutely blasphemous. Okay. But why are you taking supernatural literally? Like, I don't understand why Christians get their panties in a bunch about that kind of stuff. Like, it's not meant to be taken literally. Now, if it was, and if they would have brought Jesus into it, and then if they would have taken like all these super scripts, I would have not watched the show. I would have that would have pissed me off. But they didn't do that.
Yeah, they were smart enough to not touch the Jesus aspect of it because it's like I think they acknowledge that Jesus definitely did the thing. Yeah, because this is still the same world we all live in. Right. But the idea that they don't go there. Yeah, I think saved that aspect of the biblical end of what they were doing. Right, because they're already playing in that role. But you know, not to retread.
But I mean, our role essentially is to be relational creatures. Like we're meant to be relational. We're meant to love people. We're meant to accept them where they're at, but love them enough to not necessarily leave them there. Yeah. And I have to accept that that's not just me doing that for other people. That's other people doing that for me. Yeah. I have to realize like I may not be in a place where I need to be left. Mm-hmm. I could have some very wrong ideas. I've probably voiced some of them on this podcast. But that's what it's here for. And that it's okay. First of all, that's okay. Yeah. Because it's where I am now. Mentally, it's where I am. Thought-wise, it's where I am. Yeah. And that if somebody else knows a truth that I don't know and they can show it to me in such a way that it's like, hey, I'm telling you this because I love you and because I think you'll really find it valuable. Mm-hmm. If like I need to be 100% open and to listening to that. But I understand like when somebody doesn't even want to give it a chance because their experience with people of faith, whether it's the Christian faith or whatever faith, you know, have treated them poorly or have treated them like, oh, you don't believe what I believe, well, you don't have any value. Well, that's blasphemous. Agreed. How are you going to say someone that God created has no value because they don't believe like you want them to believe? That's blasphemous. Like, that's not respecting God's personage at all. Yeah. And so I think if people could take that mindset of, hey, this person might be what I would classify as a horrible person. They're, oh man, I'll just give you some things that really irk me, like people who smoke with the windows up while their kid's in a car seat in the back. I'm like, stop it! Don't do that to that poor kid. Littering is a thing for me, and to be fair, I have littered. But it irks me. Like if I see somebody toss litter out their window, like it drives me crazy. I mean, these are all first world problems, right? Like there's far worse things that happen. But I'm just saying, like, but to be able to follow the person, like, oh man, I ended up right next to the person who I saw throw stuff out of their car. How am I going to treat them? Am I going to like get up in their face because they littered, or am I just going to engage them in conversation, find out who they are as a person, and then see where that goes? Maybe we get into a relationship with each other. Maybe we go have a beer sometime, and then maybe like a month or two down the road, I could be like, yeah, I remember when I met you, you like threw something out of your car. Yeah. Why'd you do that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was a boneheaded move. It's like,
and then
you should probably stop doing that.
And that's the end of y'all's friendship. How dare you judge me?
Yeah, exactly. But but if I put in the relational equity to bring somebody along to become a better person,
yeah, that's
what Jesus did. That's who Jesus is. And
if
you want to skip all that and get right to the end part, like everybody everybody that I come across that really seems to be anti all that, they always want to skip to the end. Like they don't want to take the journey. Like, that's not how that works. That's not how anything in life. The only thing that works that way is fast food, and fast food is terrible. Like anybody would choose like your Thanksgiving meal that your grandma worked on all day long. Everybody's going to choose that meal over a Burger King burger like all day long, unless your grandma's a terrible cook. In which case, I'm sorry, I don't know what that's like.
I did not have that problem.
I don't know what that's like, but yeah, you get my point.
Yeah, I think.
So I like to incorporate like nerdy stuff. I wanted to bring this up in the conversation of the podcast because I love to incorporate nerdy stuff into church things. So I don't think a lot of churches do it.
Yeah.
So like when The Force Awakens came out, I preached a whole sermon called The Force Awakens, but it was in reference to the Holy Spirit,
of course.
But I think it was 38 Star Wars quotes into the sermon, and I told people like right up front, I was like, we are going to use Star Wars to talk about the Holy Spirit, and I'm going to be quoting a lot of Star Wars. If you can figure out how many references there are, I've got a $100 bill in my pocket for you. And I had like $1,000 in my pocket because I figured nobody got it. Like I think the closest somebody said was like 22 or something. I was like, nope.
If I was paying attention, I probably would have nailed most of them.
You might have got them. But like that was a lot of fun. We've done at Halloween or October, we've done a Mind Monster series. And where we used all the different universal monsters to talk about like just different things that kind of plague us. So like the Wolfman was being two-minded, where you say one thing and you do another, or whatever. And I understand Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde might have been a better one for that, but Wolfman was more fun. Vampires, like how we let people drain the life out of us. And, kind of the people that we need to stop hanging around because that's what they do.
Yep.
Or sometimes we do that to ourselves because we won't stop beating ourselves up and we just kind of like drain the life out of ourselves.
But sometimes you need to recognize when you're the vampire.
Yeah, sometimes you are the vampire.
Yep.
And you can be the one sucking life out of other people. The Mummy, which is just like letting life bind us up so that we just are very restricted and kind of the dead life that leads to. So it was just like that kind of stuff. That was a lot of fun.
That's funny. I like that.
See what else? So we did a whole Walking Dead series to talk about like how we like. So the whole first part of the series was like talking about how we're meant to walk in life. But then the last sermon in the series was actually kind of flipped it all on its head to say we are the Walking Dead because the Bible says that we're to be dead to ourselves but alive to Christ.
Yeah.
So anyways, and that was it. We did this whole video thing where we kind of like spoofed The Walking Dead, and we went out to somebody's ranch and like filmed on horses, and we had a Carl, and I think I didn't play the sheriff. I was directing everything. The guy who played the sheriff, every time he said Carl's name, he had to say it somewhat differently.
Yeah,
he could never say it the same way twice. So he'd always be like, so he started with Carl, and then it was Carl, and then it was Coral, and then it was Corel, and then eventually it was like Corral or something. Like it got crazy. Like he never called him the same thing twice.
Crayola.
It was a lot of fun.
I
Anyways, I love doing that kind of stuff, and we're planting a church in. Can I say the city where we live? Like, I don't know.
You can say the city.
Okay, yeah. We're planting a church in Conroe, Texas. And I'm just hoping that we get to incorporate a lot of elements like that, because I just think that's not because I think it's like super important to anybody's spiritual growth, but it's just kind of who I am as a person.
Yeah.
And I just want to create an environment where people can enjoy those kind of things and realize, like, being a Christian, following Christ, doesn't mean you're like living this super lame, not fun, I never do any of the stuff that I like to do because I'm not allowed to do that. Yes, you are allowed to do those things. The Bible's pretty clear about what you can or what you should and shouldn't be doing. And like, we just accept you where you are. And hey, maybe you're not doing some of the things 3 years from now that you were doing before. But if that is the case,
yeah,
A, it's going to have been your decision on whether or not to continue to do it. And B, at least personally, I can speak from experience. Like, I look back on the things that I don't do anymore and I don't miss any of it. I'm like, yeah, life's better now that I'm not doing these things, or that I am doing these other things. Everything that the Bible calls us to is always for our benefit. Not always fun. That's for dang sure. It's not always fun,
Yeah.
but it's always for our benefit. Like, I have to go do men's group tonight. I didn't want to do men's group tonight. I planned on spending this evening with my wife, but my buddy called me or texted me and said, hey, I can't be there. Can you do it? So
she is pretty
do
good.
I want to do it? No. Am I going to do it? Yeah. And am I going to have fun doing it? Yeah, I probably will. Because I haven't seen Jake in a while. He's a cool guy.
I like Jake.
I love Jake.
Jake's a good dude. That's why one reason why I got to go to the last couple of Mondays.
Yeah.
So it was good to see Jake. And then I had to go to Wednesday.
Anyways, okay,
Now-
my religious rant is over. for the
this
time
whole podcast has been nothing but a religious
being.
rant.
Well, I mean, what did you expect? You invited a pastor on the podcast.
I know. Well, like we've been
But
wanting
hey,
to have.
but he's also a pastor that got your Dracula 2000 reference. So
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people don't, but it's fine. It's fine if you don't understand that, people. But what was I going to say? I don't know. We've been on so many different tangents today. I don't know. We need to wrap up because it has been literally over 3.5.
Listen, if you take away nothing else, don't go to the diner and cart if it's gross.
I agree. Don't go to that. Well, I mean, go to it. Don't eat there.
Yeah, go to it. Go to it.
Bring
but
food.
don't eat there. Don't eat there.
Bring Sonic.
Yeah. The second worst burger.
Your Sonic really
second
must
worst
suck.
burger I've
Your
had in
Sonic
my life,
must
Sonic.
suck bad. But either way, guys, I didn't even do any of the stuff at the beginning, but it's okay. Of course, you can follow me at all the Shoky related things. No one of my normal guest hosts are here, so that's fine. If you do want to write into the show or leave comments, we'll definitely check that out. You can do so at NowYouMadeItAwkwardMail@gmail.com. If you thought anything about this really long and rambling discussion we had about religion and sci-fi, by all means, tell us what you think. And obviously, I'll try to have James back whenever available. But next time, I'll figure out the recording situation ahead of time. Honestly, if I just get a switchboard, like if I just find a spare $500 to buy the switchboard I want, then I'll just make that happen, and life will be so much easier for myself.
You could sell some of your plastic rich stuff that you don't have
I'm
room
doing
for.
that to pay medical bills right now. So I've already been
Listen,
selling
what's more
plastic
important,
things.
medical bills or a soundboard? I'm just saying.
I mean, prior to this, I would have said soundboard, but then medical bills. You know, if I didn't have to buy a new car all of a sudden, that kind of is a thing. So now we got to make car note this month. Fun.
And hey, if you want to go subscribe to James at War on YouTube, I'll never know.
You'll never
Don't
know.
check it anymore.
I don't even know how many current subscribers he
I
has.
think it's like 150,000 or something like
That's
that.
still more than I've got in all of my channels combined. So it's
And
fine.
I don't even care. It's
Yeah.
like I'm just throwing it away.
I mean, you have.
Yeah, I have.
Honestly.
Yeah, I did.
You've discarded it.
I've discarded.
You've discarded your old life. and
People
moved
are
on.
literally just like, "Where did James at War go?"
No one knows. Nobody
Nobody
who was.
knows. It's a
nobody who
mystery.
watched you. Still
There was a
watches
Reddit
YouTube.
thread going on for a while, and that was enjoyable.
Was there?
I lived vicariously through my children who were kept me up to date on the "Where did James at War" Reddit thread.
Well, he's
was
here
going.
now, y'all.
Yeah.
I will tag you
Yeah,
on
if
the
anybody,
thing.
yeah, if anybody, but they can't find the thread anymore, so
Yeah.
it got deleted or something. But
Yeah, Reddit updates.
yeah,
Previous universe.
yeah. And then somebody had tagged me like in a lost media, like a really popular lost media Reddit thread.
Yeah.
Was like, because there were some videos that I put out and then thought better of it. I made I know we're wrapping up, but
Yeah.
I made a video that had a parody. No, it wasn't a parody. It was an original, but it was about Mario, but it was just full of sexual double entendres, like nothing overtly filthy or anything like that. It was a long time. I don't make this is why I took it off.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just full of double entendres and like stuff like, I have to eat the mushroom to increase my length and my girth and stuff like that. And it was this whole song, and
Awesome.
And at the end of the day, I was like, that's probably not it. I wasn't a pastor at the time,
No.
and, but I knew God was probably going to call me to something like that. And I'm like, this is probably not a great thing to have on the internet for 10, 15 years from now. So, and somebody was referencing it because I think I put it out for like a day, and then I deleted it. And I hope nobody ever finds it because even I don't have a copy. I don't remember a lot about it.
I don't know. I mean, the Wayback Machine might find something.
Who knows? It might.
Well, the good news is that you're allowed to evolve to be a better person.
That's
'cause
true.
Jesus did that with his disciples.
That's true. And I do have some stuff on there that I wouldn't do now, but I didn't take it down for that very purpose to be like,
This is
I'm
where
not the
I.
same
This is
person
where
anymore.
I was. This is where I am now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good thing to have. It's like those Facebook memories you talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
So you be reminded of your mother-in-law dying.
That's right.
Unfortunately.
Oh, man. The one thing I wanted to talk about, we didn't talk about. I wanted to talk about the casting for Zelda. We're not going to talk about it right now, but I'm just saying, I just wanted to let you know
I didn't know if
I'm
that was
personally
real.
disappointed.
I didn't know if any of that was real.
A, that I didn't say anything to you, and B, that you didn't bring it up.
No, it's fine. There's not enough. If only there was a way to have more conversations in the future.
If only.
It's the only time.
It's the only time.
We could have a 17-hour conversation that nobody would listen to.
Yeah.
But we'll deal with it later. But guys, there's a teaser for next time. Next time James comes on.
A grand opener.
Grand opening thing. So, all right, guys. Well, we'll
Spoilers,
talk to
it's
you
Tom
later.
Holland.
It should be Tom Holland. I don't know that it is.
No.
Look, I don't trust anything coming out of Hollywood right now. I treat Hollywood like Washington, D.C. I don't trust any information that's coming out of it.
Yes.
I trust what comes into my paycheck and what comes out on the screen.
Don't tell Jessica I called her Jennifer again.
She'll hear it.
Dang it.
No, she won't. She doesn't listen to this.
I'm sorry, Jennerska. No, call her Jennerska.
Jeniska?
That's far worse.
Jenica? No.
Jenica.
Jenica is technically the fusion.
Yeah.
And there are Jenicas out there.
Yeah.
And they're usually hot.
You know, that sounds true.
Yeah.
I don't know if it is, but it sounds it's
the-
one of those things.
the ones that-
if
all
you
the
met a
Jen-
Jenica, she'd probably be a
The few
good-looking-
Jenicas that I
gal.
know of are all very attractive ladies.
Okay, I've never met a Jenica personally, I don't think.
Yeah. So we'll end it on Jenica.
Yeah.
So with that, guys. Okay, bye.
Bye, Jenica.
I see her rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots and a sexy body full of tats.